Test. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anybody can hear me in the chat, push 1. Mic check 1 2 1 2. All right. Well, not sure if I'm having any technical difficulties, but Gabe A, what's going on, my brother? Yeah, peace and blessings to you. All right, so welcome back to the Black Marine Trust. This is episode 230, Geopolitics. Hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. There's a document in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage on the panel, all you have to do is ask. You can get on the panel. All right. I know people are not getting the alerts and whatnot, so I'll give them at least 90 seconds to fall in before we get the hangout started. Gabe, if you want to get on the panel, you can get on as well. Mahir, why Israel? Peace to you, brother. Happy Juneteenth. Surprised you brothers ain't out there celebrating. Popping some fireworks or something. Underrated mind. Peace and blessings. Mm. 3 people watching, but only 7 likes. It's interesting. All right. Let's just get started because we're already late. The reason why I was late is because I had to go to a Juneteenth event here in Boston, and the focus was on the impact of racism on Black kids in high school, and what are some of the solutions you can come up with. So that's why I was late for this event, this hangout. So this week has been a busy week for me because I'm double booked on a lot of events. So I work from 9 to 5, and then from like 6 to 8:30 or 6 to 8 o'clock, I'm at a meetup or some other event, and then I gotta come here and then fire up the Brain Trust and get the hangout going, get the live stream going, and then we end up about 11 o'clock, and then I gotta get up the next day and do it all over again. So yeah, Gabe, man, you always on that red team tip, man. I hear you though. I hear you. D Raptor, good evening to you, brother. All right, let me just get started because I know we don't have a heck of a whole lot of time. So all right, start sharing my screen and get going. All right. So first item on the docket is from Reuters. Venezuela's Guaido asks Jamaica not to seize PDVSA refinery shares. The ad hoc board of Venezuelan state-run oil company PDVSA, appointed by opposition leader Juan Guaido, said on Saturday it had asked Jamaica's government not to seize the company's shares in an oil refinery on the island. Jamaica's Senate in February passed legislation clearing the way for the government to acquire the 49% stake in the Petrojam refinery that PDVSA acquired in 2006. Part of late leftist President Hugo Chavez energy diplomacy efforts in the Caribbean. The board, appointed by Guaido earlier this year, in part to defend Venezuela's interests abroad, said it had also warned Jamaica's government that it cannot maintain any agreements with the government of Nicolas Maduro, a Chavez protege whose legitimacy as Venezuela's leader is disputed. We formally request the suspension of this expropriation process, the board said in a statement, adding that Guaido had made a similar request personally to Jamaica Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Neither Holness's office for Jamaica's foreign ministry immediately responded to requests for comment. The Caribbean nation's government owns the other 51% of the shares in the refinery. Guaido, the leader of Venezuela's opposition-controlled National Assembly, in January invoked the Constitution to assume an interim presidency, arguing Maduro's 2018 re-election was illegitimate. He has been recognized as rightful leader by dozens of countries, including the United States, but Jamaica has not recognized him as president. His representatives abroad have fought efforts by creditors of Venezuela's highly indebted government to seize foreign assets belonging to PDVSA. But Maduro retains control of the military and most state functions, including PDVSA's day-to-day operations within Venezuela. He calls Guaido a U.S.-backed puppet seeking to oust him in a coup. So, what people need to understand here is this: Jamaica is not going to back down from this engagement. They don't care if the United States is bolstering up Guaido, because they have legitimate stake in this oil refinery, and they want to make sure that they get what they deserve, and which is rightfully theirs. And what Guaido wants to do is take it from them, and cut the Jamaicans out, cut the Barbadians out or Bajans out, and cut the Trinidad and Tobago out as well, because Trinidad and Tobago share a plain where oil excavation is actually there. And if I remember correctly, Chavez has shared resources with the whole entire Caribbean, which is how a lot of the Caribbean had to restructure itself, especially after hurricanes. So, with that being said, Guaido thinks he can come in there and tell the Jamaicans what to do. It's not going to happen. Jamaicans ain't going for that. All right, we got 20 people watching, 12 likes. Please hit the like button if you're not going to participate in the chat. So that's the skinny on Guaido in Jamaica. If he thinks he's going to strong on Jamaica, it's not going to happen. The Caribbean is a lot more mature and well suited for a confrontation with somebody like Guaido. You have to keep in mind that Guaido tried to overthrow Maduro, and wants to say that Maduro is illegitimate. Well, they do business with Maduro, so how are you going to tell the Jamaicans who they can do business with in Venezuela if you're not the president? Who the hell are you? He thinks that Guaido thinks that the United States has his back all the way into Kingston, and it's not going to work. All right, let me get to the next article. Hey, let's be frank. What's going on, brother? How you doing? My brother D.E. Raptor. How goes it? You have anything you want to add to about Jamaica and Venezuela, or Guaido for that matter. I don't think DE Raptor had.
Pretty good, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Jamaica and
Want to meet your feed, brother.
This thing may appear to be a small matter, but it's not that small. Pretty good, Mike. How are you doing?
You gotta mute your feed, DE.
What's happening, or what could possibly happen, is that if Jamaica is allowed to do this, what will happen is that Jamaica will actually, any funds that come from that refinery is divided between Jamaica and PDVSA. And right now, those funds are being deposited in a bank in New York, Citibank. And what's happening is that Citibank's holding on to the funds. That's what the United States is using to sow some of its mischief. You know, if Jamaica takes over the whole running of the ownership of the refinery, then it takes away a lot of that money. A lot of that money is going to disappear. If you're making $1 billion off that, and Jamaica is getting 600 million, and they're getting 400 million, that's a lot of money. So they have to keep that. Now, if Jamaica does it, what about all the other countries that Chavez set up businesses like that with, and part of the money is going into Guaido's pocket? If those countries do the same thing that Jamaica did, or trying to do, or attempting to do, what's going to happen to the money that they're going to make now? Guaido is not going to get any. So this thing goes farther than what that article is really saying. Really deeper.
Yeah, we talked about this back in February when it did happen. Jamaica, very mature country in terms of politics. Barbados too. Barbados and Trinidad had a closed door session. Yeah, can you hear me? I think you need to unmute your feed, or I mean unmute your mic again.
Can anybody out there hear me?
I can hear you, DE. Can you hear us? Yeah, I think DE is having technical issues. If you can hear us, DE, you might want to log off and log back on. Let me answer. Let's be Frank's question. He says, Mike V, will Iran be allowed to join the SCO? So Iran can't join the SCO until they take care of this nuclear deal.
I think Mike
that
got
was the whole purpose.
I think Mike got knocked off.
No, I'm right. I'm right here, DE. Yeah. So what happened? Let's be frank. Was that Iran has to take care of the JCPOA, which is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and once that's taken care of, they can join the SCO. The problem is joining the SCO would poison the deal to begin with. So that's why they won't, engage the SCO in membership joining. They're an observer, but they're not they're not a official member because of this. Israel knows this, and they pushed Trump to tear up the deal as a way to stop Iran from ever joining that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So that's the skinny on that. And I'll go into it more of it later. Maybe BGS might have a difference of opinion, but it'd be good to actually dissect. Let's Be Frank says, will all of the countries sanctioned by USA join political economic forces to create their own exchange payment systems to bypass SWIFT and U.S. monetary system? You're already seeing that happen now with cryptocurrencies and blockchain. They're all going out of their way to find alternative methods and alternative systems to the SWIFT. So that's happening in real time. Let me go to the next article. All right. This one is from Think in Progress. Lindsey Graham wants to invade Venezuela to put points on the board. Senator Lindsey Graham wants the United States to use military force to intervene in Venezuela to dispose the country's contested president, Nicolas Maduro. His reason: it will scare other foreign countries like North Korea and Iran to see America put points on the board. During the Fox News appearance on Friday morning, Graham was asked about the many foreign policy challenges President Trump faces with Maduro still in power. North Korea continuing to ignore its supposed deal with Trump to move towards total denuclearization, and Iran allegedly attacking oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. It's a time of testing, Graham responded, urging Trump to put military force on the table the way President Ronald Reagan did when he invaded Grenada in 1983. This, he argued, could help sever Venezuela's support from Cuba. After praising Trump for his foreign policy diplomacy, Graham said that the time has come for action. We need points on the board. Start with your own backyard. Tell Cuba if you're not out of Venezuela in a week and people are starving and dying in Venezuela because Maduro is such a thug, then we are making a mistake. Fix Venezuela, and everybody else will know you are serious. This is not the first time that Senator has argued for invading Venezuela, or at least threatening to do so, as a strategy to stop Cuban influence there. But it is the clearest it is the clearest he's been that he wants to pursue a warmongering approach for the optics it will create. Trump cited Graham in February as an example of a person he listens to on foreign policy matters. This is really reckless language to use as a form of dialogue. I mean, you're talking about using the United States military to overthrow and to tear apart a country that hasn't attacked you. DE, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Iranian woman. Good evening to you as well. Um, Lindsey Graham acts like he's the president. And my thing is, if you want to talk presidential and threaten countries and do this and do that, maybe you should run for president instead of trying to, you know, make these big, bold statements that you yourself are not going to be able to fulfill anyways. But you're trying to engage Trump to use military action in Venezuela, which would be a total disaster. Be an absolute total disaster. There's no way that invasion in Venezuela will go well. You'll lose a lot of Americans going in. USA can't win guerrilla warfare with Venezuela. It will be a disaster. I agree with you 100%. It will be a disaster to send Americans into there. I think, and I could be wrong about this. I think we talked about this before, that NATO, Colombia has joined NATO. So now you're talking about a NATO a NATO war now. Imagine sending NATO into Venezuela. I mean, can you imagine the backlash behind Latin American countries allowing Venezuela to be ganged up on by a North Atlantic Treaty Organization? I don't think that's going to go well at all. I mean, we don't even know what kind of weapons these Latin American countries have had. You know, whether they acquired weapons from Russia or China, or even have manufactured their own homebrew sort of weapons in terms of missile capabilities and other warheads. They don't have to be nuclear. They can just be chemical based. They'll use it if they think that they're going to be overrun. They'll use it if they have it. I don't think that DE can hear me. So, all right, let me get to this next one. King Damiete says he should send his family to fight. He should. I don't even think he has a family. For obvious reasons. They're a bit Looney Tunes in the head. So, all right, let me get to this next article. All right, this one is from Al Jazeera. Syria says it doesn't want to fight with Turkey. Damascus says military action in response to rebel violations, including the presence of fighters in a demilitarized zone. Syria does not want to see fighting with Turkey, its foreign minister said on Tuesday, and after Ankara said one of its posts in Syria's Idlib region was attacked from an area controlled by Syrian government forces. Russia, which supports Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in his country's civil war, and Turkey, long a backer of the rebels fighting him, co-sponsored a de-escalation pact for the area that has been in place since last year. But the deal has faltered in recent months, forcing hundreds of thousands of civilians to flee. About 300 people have been killed by Syrian and Russian air raids and shelling in the area since late April, according to the United Nations. Idlib in Syria's northwest along the border with Turkey is the last remaining bastion of anti-government rebels after 8 years of civil war. We hope that our military and the Turkish military do not fight. This is our principal stance, Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Mulam told reporters in Beijing, standing alongside the Chinese government's top diplomat, State Councilor Wang Yi. What we see, what we are fighting is terrorists, especially in Idlib, which is Syrian territory, part of our country. Al-Mulim, Al-Mulim said in Arabic comments translated into Mandarin. The dominant forces in Idlib region is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, a former wing of Al-Qaeda until 2016 when it re-announced its affiliation. Others, including some with Turkish backing, also have a presence. The question now is, what does Turkey want to do in Syria? Turkey is occupying part of Syrian soil and has a military presence in certain parts of Syria, al-Mulim said, or added. This action needs to be asked of Turkey. What are the actual aims? We are at fighting those terrorist groups and organizations. The people, the whole world believes those people we are fighting are terrorists. Damascus and Moscow wants HTS out of Idlib and disarm and keep pressuring Ankara to make that happen. Since April, Syrian government forces have stepped up their shelling and bombing of the area, killing scores of people. The rebels say the government's action are part of a campaign for an assault that would breach the de-escalation pact. I find this to be very interesting because the attitude here is that you know they have a right to go into Syria and occupy it. And I'm speaking about Turkey's military, and the Turkish government. That somehow, some way, if you attack, it, let me give you a quick backstory. What they consider to be foreign fighters or enemies inside Syria, they're talking about the Kurds. The Kurds are about 40 to 50,000 strong, men and women who are paramilitary that can take down the Turkish government if they so need be. They can get into a nice shooting war with them because they're backed by the United States and other and Israel as well. Israel is the only country to recognize a Kurdish state, and they do business with them. So, with that being said, what's happening here is Turkey is using the justification that they're under attack by these Kurdish rebels, these Kurdish fighters, and want to prevent the Kurds from having any sort of stake in any country in the Middle East, and they'll do whatever they can to prevent that. If that means ethnic cleansing, they basically going around killing, Kurds from Iraq all the way back into Syria as a way to prevent them from having a artificial state on their border. The Kurds are pretty much stateless. In reality, they are citizens of the Syrian government. So by law and by constitution, the Syrian government has a right to go in there and protect the Kurds from a foreign military force that's killing them, which is the Turkish military. For whatever reason, Turkey doesn't seem to understand this, or they just don't care, and they think that they can go in there and kill all these Kurds, and at the same time declare that somehow, some way that uh, the Syrian government is responsible for what the Kurds do. And in reality, they're not. You're in somebody else's country, which is Syria. So going into Syria to ethnically cleanse the Kurdish people is quite a bit dubious, as a suggestion as to what to do with these people. All right, we got 30 people watching and 22 likes. You're not going to participate in the chat, please hit the like button. All right. Go to the next article. All right, this next one is from CNBC.com. Japanese oil tanker owner disagrees with U.S. military that a mine caused blast near Iran. The Japanese owner of one of the tankers attacked near Iran on Thursday said the vessel was struck by a projectile and not a mine, which is what U.S. officials assess as the source of the blast. We've received reports that something flew towards the ship. Yotaka Kotada, president of Kokuka Sanyo, said at a press conference Friday. I do not think there was a time bomb or an object attached to the side of the ship, he said, adding that a projectile landed above the waterline. On Thursday, U.S. Central Command said in a statement that the Japanese oil tanker Kakuka or Kokuka Courageous had an unexploded limpet mine on their hull following an initial explosion. The Pentagon did not immediately respond to the CNBC's request for a comment. President Donald Trump said Friday that if Iran were to block the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to be closed for long. It's not going to be closed for long, but did not elaborate on what potential steps the U.S. would take in response. They are not going to be closing the strait. Trump reiterated during the telephone interview on Fox and Friends. Earlier this year, Iran threatened to close the strait in response to a U.S. decision to end waivers on reimposed sanctions for companies that export oil from Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important oil choke point. It's gateway for it's a gateway for almost a third of all seaborne crude oil. America's top diplomat, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, blamed Iran for Thursday's attacks without citing specific evidence as to why Tehran was responsible. Iran is lashing out because the regime wants our successful maximum pressure campaign lifted. Pompeo said Thursday no economic sanctions entitle the Islamic Republic to attack innocent civilians, disrupt global oil markets, and engage in nuclear blackmail. The international community condemns Iran's assault on freedom of navigation and the targeting of innocent civilians, he said, adding that the U.S. will defend its forces, interests, and partners. This is very interesting because it's timely. The backstory on this, for those of you who are listening and don't know what's going on, Japan's president Shinzo Abe went to Iran to actually negotiate and broker some deals the same day that the Japanese oil tanker, was actually attacked. And the idea was that if anyone could blame the attack on a Japanese oil tanker on Iran, while the Iranian ministry is having talks with the Japanese president or the Japanese prime minister, then what that means is that the Japanese prime minister will walk out and close off any option. So that's what's going on, and that's why you have this issue. DE, do you have um, anything you want to add? All right, he can't hear us. He's having technical difficulties. All right. This one is from express.co.uk. Turkey versus USA. Turkey issues huge threat to U.S. over Russia's S-400 missiles. Washington claimed it would trigger economic warfare on Ankara if Turkey went ahead with its deal to buy S-400 missiles from Moscow. The U.S., who recently sold 100 F-35 fighter jets to Turkey, see the S-400 missile system as a threat and said Turkey could not have both at the same time. However, President Erdogan's administration pledged to respond to any aggression with action of their own. Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said, if the United States takes any negative actions towards us, we will also take reciprocal steps. We are determined on the S-400 issue. No matter what the results will be, we will not take a step back. As well as threatening sanctions, Washington sent a letter yesterday saying it would pull Ankara out of the F-35 jet program despite being a fellow NATO member. The minister continued, "We reject the wording of the letter to our defense minister. Nobody can give an ultimatum to Turkey." His words echoed by Russian ambassador to Turkey, who said there is no change and there will be no change. The U.S. Defense Secretary threatened earlier this month to remove all Turkish pilots currently training in the U.S. if the deal went ahead. But it failed to deter President Erdogan. The U.S. is concerned that any F-35s they sell could be exposed to uh, subterfuge by the Russians. In addition, the Russian system is allegedly incompatible with NATO systems. Foreign minister's aggressive speech ensured that uh, the Turkish lira weakened 1.5% in a single day. The threat of sanctions has spooked investors over the past year, causing the huge lira sell-off. Washington are also offering the carrot as well as the stick as they desperately seek to get Turkey on board. They are reportedly uh, discounting their own missiles and have offered to protect the Turkish economy should Russia respond to their severing of ties. Assistant Defense Secretary Catherine Wilbarger said, "We should be seeking ways to protect the Turkish economy from any potential blowback. Turkey is learning, perhaps the hard way, that Russia cannot be relied upon." It also ties into the overall power struggle in the region as both Russia and the U.S. scramble to get nations on the side. So Turkey is just about finished, and it should be um, um, just about ready to go in a few weeks. So how this works out is that um, Turkey receives this missile system. America responds by crashing the Turkish market, and then Turkey responds back in retaliatory measures. What Turkey can do, they can cut off the access to the Black Sea. That will keep the United States from having safe passage and going to the Ukraine and other Baltic states, or not Baltic states, other areas where they need to, spy on the Russians and actually build that American port that they've been longing to build, or that NATO port that they've been longing to build at the bottom of the Ukraine. So there's a lot that there's certain things that Turkey can do that would be influential on the United States and actually make the United States, respond in a way that could be very hostile towards Turkey. I'm not sure if DE can hear me, but if you have anything you want to add, go ahead. All right, DE still having technical issues. All right. Next article is from Mail and Guardian. Don't attack the Chinese. Learn from their example. The People's Republic of China is an extremely powerful nation, the largest national economy on the planet and a major military power. one which is deeply concerned with sustaining its access to the natural resources of Arabia, Africa, and Oceania, upon which it depends. Hence, its foreign activities need to be viewed with suspicion. Are they intended to be? Are they intended to foster some kind of imperial agenda in the way the foreign activities of other powerful nations do? But such suspicion must be informed and rational. The problem with this, apart from the sloppiness and paranoia, arises when ulterior motives are involved. In other, in any country that has undergone colonial and imperial oppression, such as all African countries, ulterior motives are often suspected. Accusations of colonialism, in particular, are dangerously easy to make and therefore often made for the purposes of manipulation rather than genuine anti-colonialism. After all, colonialism was real and neocolonialism is a clear and present danger. So it is tempting to make accusations on the grounds of better safe than sorry. Yet, all too often, what is called decolonialization is simply exploitation of racial resentment, as in attacks on colonial symbols or attacks on white competitors by African aspirants to jobs. Another source of the ulterior motives is the actual colonial power, the United States and its satellites. For several years now, the U.S. has been waging an undeclared war against China, and a large part of this war is embodied in propaganda. Anyone officially associated with Western ideology or trained up through Western institutions is liable to be contaminated with xenophobia that Western media and its associated intelligentsia promotes. This tendency is particularly marked in countries that have little or no indigenous ideological structures, or where the local structures have been penetrated or supplanted by neocolonial structures. All this means is all this means that the suspicion that we deploy against China must be tempered by an understanding of those seeking to heighten that suspicion for their own purposes, and must be tested by a close assessment of how well suspicion is legitimated. This takes us to Siswa's article, Cultural Imperialism with Chinese Characteristics. Siswa says that Chinese cultural imperialism to is a threat to Africa's indigenous culture. This claim is based on Zambian government's decision to make Mandarin compulsory for all school children. Unfortunately, there is no such decision. The government has decided to make Mandarin an optional second language at all Zambian schools, a decision sponsored by the Chinese government. Thus, Siswa's article is founded on misrepresentation of the situation, would be which would not be necessary if he had a good case. Apart from the misrepresentation, however, Sichuan has no case at all. No evidence is presented that the People's Republic of China's undoubted efforts to promote Chinese culture and the Mandarin language in Zambia pose any kind of threat to Zambian independence or cultural integrity. Actually, no evidence at all is presented that the People's Republic of China is behaving in a colonial or imperialist way in Zambia. Perhaps it is, but if Sichuan wishes to convince a skeptical, a skeptical read, skeptical reader that China is a menace to Zambia's autonomy, he ought to at least provide examples. Instead, Sichuan repeats words like imperialism and colonialism over and over, declares without any evidence that apparently innocuous Chinese activities secretly prepare the way for evil policies, and deploys so many scarce quotes that it's remarkable his printer didn't run out of ink. Admittedly, Sichuan mentioned the cultural imperialism of the United States, Britain, and France, citing the global reach of bodies such as um, Francais, he he thus notes the way which these countries buttress their armed aggression, political destabilization, and economic manipulation in Africa with cultural imperialism. But China hasn't invaded Africa, doesn't appear to be involved in political destabilization, and is probably less economically manipulative than, say, the European Union or Brazil. Hence, China's cultural imperialism is not obviously linked to anything sinister, unless, like the Yellow Peril propagandists of the last century, one believes that the existence of Chinese people is ipso facto. Sinister. Sorry. There are several questions to ask about this, but the first is who does it objectively serve? Who gains from a sustained attempt to repackage Chinese attempts to expand its cultural influence as imperialism? If such attempts succeeds, it must harm Chinese influence and therefore help those opposed to China. That is, the US and its satellites, Britain, France, who together make up the main imperialist and neocolonial force intervening in Africa. Teshua claims that he wishes to see Africa develop its own cultural and political tropes, and presumably more substantive socio-economic forces to challenge this imperialism and neocolonialism. In practice, his entire article, and most of what he does, what he has done elsewhere, suggests an agenda pandering both to crude xenophobia and to subordination to the forces benefiting from it. China is one of the very few countries to break free of colonialist stranglehold. Rather than blindly attack the Chinese, it might be sensible to try and learn from their examples. One of the things that China did, for instance, was to pendulum between first Russia and then the U.S. without ever being blindly subordinated to either until it was strong enough to stand by itself. If this is the case, then it might actually be sensible to support Chinese influence in Africa to provide a counterbalance to NATO's influence. It's worth remembering that this was the stance of the old non aligned movement, upon which the Organization of African Unity was founded. Perhaps rather than shouting in chorus with imperialists and the racists, such policies might be worth revisiting. So, this is a very long article, but it was very interesting because what's happening here is that you have global forces who are capable of going to war with each other are jockeying for space on the continent. Uh, the sphere of influence is happening from all sides, whether it's Chinese influence, whether it's Japanese influence, whether it's French influence, American influence, British influence, um, and European influence as a whole. And what that's doing to Africa is it's playing with the psyche by saying, who do I really trust and who really has my best interest? It's hard if you are not exactly um, well versed on geopolitics to really understand who do you really trust and who do you make a better deal with. DE Raptor, do you have anything you want to add? If you're available. If you're not available, then and you can hear us, actually log off and log back on. Can anybody hear me in the chat? All right, we'll get to the next article. All right, this one is from TRT World. The return of Russia to Africa. Russia's role and profile in Africa and the factors underlying its activities are rarely discussed in detail. Some of the reasons for Russia's interest in the continent include the threat of its diplomatic isolation from Europe and the US over Moscow's policies in Syria, and prior to this situation in Ukraine, leaving the Kremlin with no alternative but to seek new allies. As competition for resources, political influence, and access to markets continued to increase, Russia began to look outside its outside established power centers. Africa has historically been a prominent field of influence for the United States and then the Soviet Union, USSR. Since the collapse of the USSR in 1991, Russia has been trying to establish its place by setting formative policies to reassert itself on the world stage as a major international power. Bilateral relations between the USSR and African nations were frozen at the end of the Soviet period. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to have new aspirations in Africa to restore his countries to strong power status, spurred by concerns that China, India, Brazil, and especially the United States are intensifying their involvement in Africa. The past relations and partnerships between African countries and Russia put an emphasis on political ideology, but now this has shifted. Today, Moscow wants to deepen its understanding of the business climate and explore trade and partnership opportunities in the African continent. State Duma Speaker uh, Volodin, Vitaly Volodin noted that the business component is growing in the development of relations between the Russian Federation and African countries. While Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov undertook a week-long tour of Africa, visiting Angola, Mozambique, and Namibia, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe. An increasing number of bilateral events have recently been planned, in which foreign relations will culminate in the first Russian Africa summit of more than 50 African leaders hosted by Russia in October 2019 in Sochi. Russia is returning to Africa and using all of its instruments of power, including diplomacy, energy, investments, and military support to accumulate influence. Putin views geopolitical relations as insurance for Russia's stability and the pursuit of the country's assertive stance globally. Shortage of minerals such as manganese, chrome, mercury, and chromium, in Russia's industry markets mean that Russia is willing to develop its commercial economic relations with the continent. This is being done through Russian firms which operate on the continent utilizing a pragmatic framework of economic cooperation as opposed to historic investment in the African continent, motivated purely by Europe's greed for natural resources and even China's more recent investments, which have been criticized for as being exploitative. This increase in economic cooperation is the main determining factor, especially in the fields of mining, transportation, infrastructure, construction, and industry, uh, agriculture, and tourism. A sharp contrast to the approach of neocolonialism. Putin's visit to the Republic of South Africa in 2006 was the first ever visit by a Russian leader to sub Saharan Africa, intensifying Moscow's desire to foster investment and involvement in the region through political initiatives, business delegations, and securing access to natural resources. Ethiopia and Russia also seek to enhance engagement in the development of a nuclear energy facility in Ethiopia and resumed daily flights from Addis Ababa to Moscow as part of speeding up the growing ties between the two countries. From a mining aspect, Russia is also cooperating with Zimbabwe, where it is developing one of the world's largest reserves of platinum group metals. Moreover, Russia's focus on or in Africa is centered on energy, holding key investments in the oil, gas, and nuclear power sector. State-run Russian companies such as Gazprom, Lukoil, Renova, and the aluminum company Rusal, and the state diamond mining company Arosa operate in several areas and domains of the continent by securing their power in the industrial African markets. In the first half of 2018, the trade turnover amounted to approximately $10.5 billion, and then accumulated Russian investment in Africa from 2003 to 2017 amounted to $17 billion. Furthermore, an essential component of Russia-African relations is the domain of military technical sector. Russia often uses development and military assistance to encourage African leaders to grant Russian companies easy access to their energy and mining sectors. Arms sales relations between established in the Soviet Union years have always been a priority in order to purchase military equipment and weapons. Angola and Mozambique are actively cooperating with Russia in this field. Lavrov announced plans to establish a logistics center at a port in Eritrea. Further to this, Russia donated its own weapons to the Central African Republic when they pleaded for help in fighting marauding militias countering France's other old guns, others of old guns it had seized off Somalia. Russian political aspirations in Africa include regaining the leverage once enjoyed by the Soviet Union by establishing a presence as a non-colonial power, which has been made a prominent in media reporting and official Kremlin statements on African relations. What's going on, Black Gnostic?
What's going on?
Chilling, bro. Chilling. Let me finish these last couple paragraphs and then I'll let you jump in.
All right.
The question for African foreign policymakers now is how to play it cleverly from a position of relative strength and leverage. With keen interest from not only China, US, Japan, and now Russia, the countries have the potential to take advantage and use the new ties to make the economic gains they so desperately need. However, increasing economic influence by many foreign players in Africa can lead to potential clashes and escalating competition between Russia, China, and Western countries. For now, Russia wants to support Africa to take it away from the U.S. and EU influence and use it as the pivot of Russia's future development as a global economic and strategic power. However, its main goal is to decide what unique offers it can make. This has already been made by Chinese investment or Western aid. So, Russia's return back to Africa. You have anything you want to add to this, Black Gnostic?
Well, basically, um, they're going to have to. Russia and China is going to have to come in with force to actually counter the U.S. because that's probably the next logical move because Africa is going to rise and basically this is a global competition for the ownership of the globe. So that's the next move. China's already been there in Djibouti. And
Right.
if Russia goes there, that is a telltale sign that something's getting ready to pop off.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised it took so long.
Hmm.
But the thing is the
Well,
United States gonna pivot from the Middle East down into Africa? Because they can't fight. They can't fight wars on three fronts or four fronts the
right.
way it is now.
Hmm. Right. Russia had already been in Africa for quite some time, in terms of their political influence. Right. We can go all the way
Right.
back to Patrice Lumumba.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
So, but now today they have very deep ties with Egypt. They had deep ties with Libya. Still do.
Mhm. Mhm.
They have deep ties with Sudan. So when Omar al-Bashir, the president of Sudan at the time, wanted to go to Syria to thank Bashar al-Assad on the victory of destroying the terrorists, he flew on a Russian presidential plane. He didn't have
Yeah.
his own plane, so the Russians provided him with that assistance. So the agreement also that Russia had with Sudan was to build a naval port in the Red Sea, right off the coast of Sudan itself. So then you
Mhm.
factor in Central African Republic, where Russia now has a foothold inside the country that has lots of untapped diamonds and other pieces of gold in the ground and other minerals in the ground that are untapped. If you look on YouTube, for those of you who are listening to this, there are Africans in these villages using shovels, snow shovels, with plastic blades on them to try to dig these diamonds and stuff out of the ground because it's that close to the surface. So we know
Mhm.
that there's lots of raw resources inside these areas, and the Russian government wants to help these African leaders and countries, these states, get these resources out the ground while also um, backing the countries up because African countries are looking at what happened in Syria and they're saying if Russia can defend Syria, they could probably defend us too. So why
That
not broker a
that
deal
was
with these guys?
that was the whole purpose. That was the whole purpose of them actually going into Syria. For that, you remember I told you that what 3 4 years ago why the Russians actually went into Syria, why Putin actually went to the mat over Syria. That's exactly what you just said.
Hmm.
It's a matter of trust. If you can, nobody's going to roll with you if you can't protect them.
Hmm.
Because if you will, if I mean, if you're a leader of a country and you want to do business with China or Russia or the BRICS and the United States says they're going to sanction you not only financially but also militarily, and you just seen what happened to Libya, what would you do? Okay, I can't afford to have my country destroyed or bombed by Europe and the United States if you can't protect me. So I'm gonna, what you're gonna give you give me a better deal, but guess what? Your better deal doesn't mean anything if I get bombed back to Stone Age.
Right, right, and for the most part, right now, Africa is in the right position that they need to be in. They're not at war with anybody,
Hmm.
at least not foreign wise, and they're rapidly building. They're actually a few years ahead of where they were projected to be. So
Yeah,
a lot of bridges are being laid down. A lot of buildings are being tossed up. Apartment project complexes are being tossed up there.
yeah,
They're uninhabited, so they're waiting for people to actually move in to these
yeah,
places, and they're waiting for the industries to pop off.
yeah,
Now is a great time, to get involved in that part of the continent. If you're a state power, if you're Russia
yeah,
in Ukraine is on fire. Poland is stirring the pot on whether or not they want to put Fort Trump in Warsaw or
yeah.
outside of Warsaw. That becomes a problem if you're Russia. You don't want to be isolated. So the continent is going to be the most neutral place for Russia to be.
Well, basically, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? So this is China's show, and you hit your wagon to China's star. So either you're in or out, and basically they're tied at the hip. So it, it's not one separate policy. It's a I mean it's not a separate policy. It's the same policy. It's the same policy. Now since Russia or formerly was the muscle, which China's rapidly developing as far as military. Um, it'll even things out. But before that, Russia had the big stick. They were I always use that image of Master Blaster from Beyond Thunderdome with the little guy, which is the brains, and sitting on top of the giant that was the muscle. Russia was the muscle. And so if you what did the queen do when she wanted to keep the brain, which is the money and the manufacturing, but she wanted to dump the muscle so that you can control China. So that's how come they went after Russia first. So Russia was involved first, but now China's rapidly developing as far as military is concerned. They're still connected. So Russia's just pivoting because uh, who's the biggest threat to Europe is not Russia coming across the Urals. Basically, the biggest threat to Europe now is Africa developing. So Europe really wants to basically literally strangle the baby in the bassinet before it develops.
Hmm.
That's what they want to do to Africa. So that's how come they're trying to put feminism down there. They're trying to put birth control down, abortions. They're trying to cut off this wave that they see coming. So they're trying to slow down development. They've stunted Africa for basically 2 centuries. So now that they can't stun it anymore, they're trying to slow this wave down.
Hmm.
So if they can push back Russia and China, they'll actually stop Africa's development, which is the biggest threat. But the thing is, if Africa keeps developing, then Europe has something else to worry about. Where you're basically this is remember I told you guys a couple years ago, this is the end game. What you're watching now is the end game.
Hmm.
Then you
Raptor,
basically
you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, when
You can hear
BGS
us.
finished, yeah, I can hear you now. I had a problem with my, oh man. But when BGS finished, I'll chime in.
get this is the end game. So China's been in there militarily. I mean, Russia, the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, was in there before the during the Cold War. Yeah, they were in there heavy because they were actually combating the U.S. Militarily for control of the continent, also Latin America. I mean, that's on record. But when it fell, then you had a unipolar world. In fact, I think it was the Foreign Affairs. I think is this issue they're talking about. Did the United States squander its unipolar moment? Because right after 1989, George Bush, basically George Bush, was it in 91, talked about the New World Order is here, basically the unipolar world, and they're asking, did the United States squander that? So now that has declined, and now they're in the fight for their lives. Not only just not you can see it's not just because every show you do has to do with this competition. It's not just militarily, it's financially, it's everything because China's expanding so rapidly, across the globe, and Africa's the centerpiece. It always has been. It always has been. That's where Europe eats. It's where Europe eats. If they can't access Africa, they don't eat, and they know it. That's been the case since Rome. Rome, if Egyptian wheat didn't enter Rome, Rome would starve. So for the last 2,500 years, Europe has depended on the fruits that come out of Africa.
Hmm.
So basically, they're trying to stall this progress, which is probably impossible at this point. But the thing is, United States has to try. I remember Craig Hewlett back in 2003 when this Middle East stuff actually really started to gear up and jump off. And he told us, he said, it's not the matter whether they succeed or not. The thing is that they're going to try. They're going to try because they have to. And this is, it whether they succeed or not is indifferent. They have to try. If you look at it from the United States perspective, you either take a seat or you actually get out there and compete. So this is them competing.
Hmm.
So basically, you're gonna see this dotted all over the globe, from Latin, from Jamaica to Venezuela to Eastern Europe to Africa, even inside Europe, the European Union itself, with which Shanghai actually doing contracts with Italy and Greece and Germany and Spain, and to all the way to the Far East with Hong Kong and Taiwan. You're going to see it all over. This is literally a global chess match going on right now. And you can't separate Russia and China. Russia and China are tied at the hip.
Yep.
You also, I don't know, you didn't mention Turkey, but
Well,
Turkey is,
Turkey
they're
jump.
allowing,
Well, Turkey jump.
Turkey actually
Oh, go ahead.
to
Go ahead.
set back into that Ottoman mode, and that's not good.
Well, when you know what, when you have a failed coup, when you try to sponsor a failed coup, your friends tend not to trust you. We try to stab you for your friend in the back. He tends not to trust you.
Thank God. Yeah.
Hmm? I mean, if you were Erdogan, would you trust the United States?
Not in this position. Nope.
Not in this position.
Not that time. Not in this position. Not this time. Because
Turkey has a lot of.
right now
Go
you
ahead.
have what you have is the United States that thinks it's still the hegemon, that it can decide who does what, where, when, how, why. We tell you what to do. Our position is to tell you what to do, and your position is to follow what we tell you what to do. And,
Yeah.
and
I mean, you just read an article about Lindsey Graham. What did he say?
We should go in there and take them down. Take down
And take him
Venezuela.
down, and let everybody else know that the United States means business, right?
but he wants to get
Right.
back into a position where the United States already lost. And what I can't understand why they were trying to do that again, because they moved out of the Middle East specifically because they couldn't handle that four fronts that they were trying to fight.
That's the same. That's the thing. Okay. Remember, I told you we kept saying that Venezuela is about oil. And I told you it's not about oil.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. Well, Lindsey Graham just proved it. It's not about oil.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
for me, from what I can see, they got two moves they can make.
mm-hmm.
Either just bomb the whole planet or go for economic catastrophe. Otherwise,
The
there are no moves that they can make, because right now, even with Trump, is trying to
you still
push
there?
the envelope to the point where I can't figure out what he's trying to do, unless he's trying to act like the madman, proverbial madman, like Nixon did.
I
And
mean,
then
at this point, if you look at what does the United States have, what do they have left to actually force the world to do anything? What do they have left?
Military power.
Military
well,
power and
they still
basically
have the dollar to some extent,
the dollar infrastructure, because
right?
it's so weaved in, which is something I mean, I've
Right.
been saying it for years. The reason that you can't um, come off the dollar, because it's so integrated into the financial system. Basically, um, if you took the dollar off right now, the whole thing would collapse. You just can't pull the whole dollar. You just, because it's still
Now it's like
80%
playing
connected.
Jenga.
Yeah, it's like playing Jenga. Yeah,
But people are everybody is you see one country after another making that step,
yeah,
and
yeah.
pretty soon you're gonna have if the EU wants to trade with China, if the EU wants to trade with Russia,
Hmm.
and if the EU want to trade with Africa,
Hmm.
they're gonna have to come off the dollar.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it takes time.
Yeah,
You remember the dollar's been in control for like 80 years. It's not something that just happened overnight.
right.
And before that, the dollar has been a global currency since 1890. So this is, so basically the dollar rising to power and prominence and to its to its to its peak, to where it's actually globally accepted like that, man, that took like 60, 70 years. It didn't happen overnight. And for it to decline, it's not gonna happen in a year. It's been ongoing since 2009. They've been looking for a way to get off the dollar since the economic downturn in 2008. They've been looking for a way to actually either append the dollar's power or get off it altogether. I just did there's a couple of articles I did. I was going to actually marked up from that Henry C.K. Lew did back in like 2008, 2007, 2008, about China getting off the dollar and how you do it, and the dollar, what he called it, the dollar hegemon. Uh, I'm probably going to record it and probably put it up like either tonight or sometime tomorrow and actually put it up, because they've been talking about this for years. It's not something that's new. It's not new to me. But the thing is that that he was calling for it like 11, 12 years ago.
Well,
And go ahead.
from what I can see, China can't get off the dollar yet because it's only them and Russia. If they can get Africa to a position where it's economically feasible, that you got a higher trading, what I say, the better paid trading partnership between Russia, Africa, and China, then it's going to kind of like force the EU's hand, and they have to do something.
The EU doesn't want to be on the dollar either.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I said they're going to force their hand, because they're going to have to choose. We want to trade with this block of people. You got more than a billion people in China, more than a billion people in Africa, and then you got the Russians, and we got to buy our energy from the Russians. So who do we choose? You understand?
I understand. The thing
Also
is,
Latin America.
yeah, but the thing is what people don't appreciate. Yeah, it took me a long time to appreciate. It took me about 3 or 4 years to actually appreciate it. How complex this global financial architecture actually is. It's not simple. It's highly, highly complex, man. It's like operating on somebody's nervous system, right? All those nerves tangled up and trying to trace them all back. It's highly, highly complicated, and it's not easy. And when you do try to get off, say like Venezuela tried, or you know, Iran tried, or a number of countries actually tried. Basically, financially, they destroyed. Look what happened. Look what's happening in Venezuela without a shot being fired.
But see, this thing, this what are you talking about here? Wasn't built just by the United States. All the people involved, except for China to some extent, helped to build that dollar system throughout the planet.
Because they had to.
Yeah.
Because everything else was wrecked. They had to. I mean, it's in gold, dollars, and power. Why they had to do it. It's right there. The thing is, it's been weaved into the. It's been weaved into the whole. It's actually basically the globalism, the global structure that has been built on top of it. So basically, your dollar is the foundation of it. So the thing is, how can you how can you how can you how can you change the foundation of on a building while it's still running, while people are still in it?
Everybody thinks that it was built on oil, but it wasn't. It was started
No.
long before the oil thing came along. The oil thing just cemented it. That was
Yeah.
like pouring glue into all the little cracks and let it,
Uh,
all the
uh,
cracks.
Basically, basically in 1971, the United States told them, oil came after that. That oil was just a kicker. United States told them, well, you know what? If you don't, after they went off the gold standard, which violated the Bretton Woods Agreement, they told them, if you don't want to keep this agreement, basically, good luck. We'll take all our dollars back. We'll take our hit, and you're on your own. And basically, you won't have any financial architecture. And everybody backed down, and they're still backing down.
I remember when the U.S. military. I was in the military at the time. In Germany, the U.S. told the government, you know what? We are going to put dollars in your economy, and we're going to mark the money. And you'd be surprised what happened. You know what I'm saying? They pulled $1 bills out of the economy, and Germany was like, "What?" I don't know if people back in the U.S. heard about it. I was there, and I know.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
it happened in England too.
Yeah, well, basically, that's how come the They never told. They never actually let the author actually push his book. Okay, because that book, they didn't want that book popularized because it tells the whole story. Gold Dollars and Power tells the whole story of the Bretton Woods system and what went on behind it. I mean, the exact whole.
And
So you
that
read
will
that book, you
be,
understand. Go ahead.
yeah, we will have a geopolitics hangout on gold, dollars, and power. So
Hmm.
be on the lookout for that in the next few weeks. All right, let me get to this next article. This one is
Go
from
ahead.
Business Insider. All roads lead to occupation. Here's what would happen if Trump followed through on threats to send troops to Venezuela. For a brief moment in April, Venezuela's opposition was euphoric. It believed it was close to ousting. Be just giving a lot of feedback. Let me put him on mute.
Okay.
It believed it was close to ousting socialist president Nicolas Maduro and installing opposition leader Juan Guaido as rightful leader of the troubled Latin American nation. Late in the month, Guaido stood outside a military air base in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, calling for Maduro's powerhouse army to change allegiances. Rebel soldiers who had already defected stood next to him, bandanas tied around their faces. The operation flatlined in a matter of days, with Guaido ultimately failing to oust Maduro. However, during the uprising, the U.S., which recognizes Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela, quickly came to his aid. Senior Trump administration officials suggested military action could even be possible. While most analysts agree that a military intervention would be ill-advised, U.S. officials repeatedly floated the idea of sending troops to to the crisis-stricken country. Military action is possible if that's what's required. That's what the United States will do. Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, told Fox News in May. Now that the dust has settled after the failed uprising, Guaido still mentions the possibility of a military intervention in a worst-case scenario, but his U.S. counterparts have, in public at least, dropped the issue completely. The U.S. sudden radio silence on the Venezuelan crisis has international spectators asking if the threats were ever meant to be serious. Dr. Frank O'Mara, director of the Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center, said the officials were most probably bluffing to scare Venezuelan armed forces into turning their backs on Maduro. A military intervention is highly improbable because it would be too simple to approach to highly complex situation on the ground, he told Insider. It's unlikely that it would be as clean cut as people would like it to be, Morris said. Wars are messy, wars are complicated. If the U.S. military were to intervene in Venezuela, there would be two options, according to Moore. It could send fighter planes, bombers, and drones to strike the Venezuelan government's military and political centers, or it could launch a full-scale invasion combining airstrikes with an estimated 150 to 200,000 ground troops. Mora believes the U.S. military could take on Maduro's 150,000-man army, but Venezuela's geography might become a problem in the case of a ground invasion. The South American nation is large, more than twice the size of Iraq, and a complex topography, which includes mountainous areas and part of the Amazon rainforest. This is just a map of Venezuela. I believe this is probably like Google Earth. I don't have a mouse right now, but if you look around the white areas around the water, those are the shallow areas where the reefs are, and so you cannot pass U.S. warships in those areas. The only thing that can come through there is a landing craft, and a landing craft would easily be decimated going in there before it even get troops off. Before it can even open up its loading bay to allow troops to get out, it would be decimated by Venezuelan artillery. Regardless of this approach, all roads lead to occupation, Morris said, because both options would wipe out local security forces and force the U.S. to fill that void. This is where things could get even trickier. For the U.S. to help Venezuelans transition to a new government, It would not only have to take on the current government, Morris said, it would have to also it would also have to control various non-state armed groups like paramilitary organizations, militias, and Colombian guerrillas. These groups grow more powerful every day by mining illegally, trafficking drugs, and trading weapons. They are especially entrenched in southern Venezuela. The region is not only more isolated and rich in minerals, but it is also borders Colombia, where the troops can launder their illicit goods. It is not just a question of occupying Caracas. You have to go into the country, neutralize or eliminate any potential threats to a future government, Morris said. If foreign armies were to intervene, the armed groups would most likely side with Maduro to protect the corrupt state employees, helping them. According to a report by International Crisis Group, the clash could expose civilians to even more violence. That means the U.S. would have to occupy one of the most dangerous regions in the world and could only leave a subduing a number of gangs with constantly shifting loyalties. It is unclear how long that would take. According to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, a military expert at the think tank Defense Priorities, past interventions by U.S. troops prove how difficult it is to decide another country's internal politics. With our with our horrible track record, I can't think of any place where we have tried that and it ended up working out. Davis told Insider. Davis pointed to the example of Libya, where the U.S. Army conducted precision strikes in 2011. Though the intervention helped bring down dictator Muammar Gaddafi, the now North African nation is now in the midst of the third civil war in less than a decade. The U.S. has also been in and out of Iraq since it toppled dictator Saddam Hussein in 2003, spilling both American and Iraqi blood. Similarly, U.S. troops have been fighting in Afghanistan for the past 18 years with the mission of bringing down the Taliban. There is no reason to believe that the intervention in Venezuela would depose Maduro without similar drawn out conflicts, according to Davis. It's a bad deal for us, it's a bad deal for the Venezuelans, he said. So, that's a picture of Libya, for those of you in the chat watching this. What a shame. A country that was once vibrant um, is now in ruins because of U.S. intervention. Um, Black Gnostic, you have anything you want to add to that? Or DE, you have anything you want to add to
I don't think they have given up because this thing with Mexico is like they're trying to get Mexico to almost stop immigration on their southern border, and if they can force Mexico into that position, they think that um, if they go into Venezuela militarily, that the people have nowhere to go except Brazil and all the other countries in South America. And the other day, Brazil, Bolsonaro came out. I don't know if I sent you guys that article, but he came out and says he wants to let everybody in Brazil own a gun, and I think
that?
that that is going to lead to civil war in Brazil. And I'm
You know
serious
what that is?
because they already started marching in Brazil. I mean, they already started marching in Brazil. That division in Brazil is there. And
You know what that is?
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, you know what that is? That's the NRA and guns rights advocate groups pushing that agenda down in Brazil as a way to sell more guns and to take land from the indigenous people.
Well, the problem is that the indigenous people are not going to be buying guns. they already got a problem with guns. I don't know if you know, in the favela. I mean, it's and it's not only in the favelas now; it's bleeding over into the street.
Right.
Now the police they put an army on the armies on the street. Once before you wouldn't see the army; they'd be driving around with vehicles. Now they're putting the army on the street, not just the military police. Because Brazil's got about five different police forces. One is the city police, you know, but state police, national
Right.
police, and they
Right.
have the national army. And now they're putting the national army on the street. So the
Mm,
guns are coming onto the street now. So when he's talking about buying, letting everybody arm themselves, I'm thinking that he is in a really bad position because he chose the U.S. over the population. The population of Brazil are kind of skeptical of U.S. ruling over
mm,
them,
mm,
and Bolsonaro is trying to push them into. So if he starts a civil war and gets the army back in there like they were in the 70s and 80s before Lula, then there's going to be that problem throughout South America. And Brazil, I mean, Brazil can't no longer act like the stabilization force in South America.
yeah, and there's a lot more weapons
They
floating around than it used to be.
Yep.
Yeah, they are dealing with the gangs actually like setting up IEDs on certain routes. You know,
Mm,
with the president's administration passes through. So they found several vehicles that have been rigged with V-beds, vehicle-based improvised explosives.
Yeah, nobody trusts the government down there, and they
yeah.
trust Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
I don't know how that guy got elected the president because
Right.
something went on behind the scenes that not supposed to. Well, that something went on behind the scenes.
Mm,
Something happened. I
American
know
money.
the U.S.
Um,
hand. I know the
American
U.S. hand was in getting rid of Lula and what's the name? The lady. I forgot her name.
American money. Obviously,
Hmm.
European and American money.
Yeah, CIA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
CIA,
he's a
Mossad.
CIA. He's a CIA plant.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think he's leading. What kind of what's happening? Because he came and have a conference with Trump or Trump's people, I should say, not Trump,
Mm-hmm.
Trump's people, and then he went back home and make this speech. And when he made the speech and come out with all these things, I said something is going on besides what they're talking about. Something's going on in the background. Then when they come out and said, "Hey, we're going to charge Mexico tariffs and we're going to force them to build a wall in the south on the southern border," I said, "Uh oh."
Yeah, well, you knew there was you knew there was coming in 2017 when he took office, and basically him and Xi were actually talking about this, and Xi was trying to say, "Don't it'd be best for you not to go into a isolationist policy," and Trump didn't um, didn't adhere to that, so here we are. So how do you be a globalist power and be isolationist at the same time? How do
But
you do that?
they had the opportunity, like you said, after the Russian. The Russian Confederate, well, not Confederate, USSR, as they
Yeah,
call them.
yeah.
After they say, you know what, let's stop this tit for tat business
Mm,
and start growing our economy.
right.
And then they took advantage of that.
They
They
took
had
advantage.
ideal, circumstances
Yeah.
to keep
They, they
that,
they can't help themselves. De they can't help themselves.
this thing for another century. They would have had the century without even firing a shot.
They can't help themselves, can they? You know you you
The
know how it is.
military industrial complex that can't help itself.
Well, well, basically, no. They've always done this. They can't help themselves.
Hmm.
They can't help themselves. That's what they do. They've been doing it for well, since the Greeks, man. They've been doing it. They just can't help themselves.
Mm.
Hmm.
I mean, the military industrial complex could have put bases all over the globe and still raked in the money,
Hmm.
but they can't help themselves.
All right, let me get to this next article, and we'll open it up for mic and then close out 11. All right, this one is from the Nation. SCO for boost in global anti-terror fight. The member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Friday resolved to accelerate efforts to promote social, economic, and anti-corruption cooperation, as well as to introduce the use of local currencies in mutual financial transactions and settlements. The member states also resolutely condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and urged the international community to strengthen global cooperation. I'm getting a lot of feedback from both of you guys.
Okay, because we can't hear it.
You can't hear us? Oh, sorry.
I said I can't hear the feedback, but
yeah, I can hear it on my side. The heads from the SCO member and observer states met in Bishkek in the Kyrgyz capital on June 13th to the 14th for a meeting of the SCO's heads of state council, wherein they underscored their intention to continue to rely on the goals and objectives of the SCO Charter and to follow the Shanghai spirit that embodies mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, mutual consultations, according to a statement issued by the SCO Secretariat. Prime Minister Imran Khan, Indian Prime Minister Modi, President of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, President of China Xi Jinping, President of Kyrgyzstan Jeanbekov, President of Russia Vladimir Putin, President of Tajikistan Rahman, and President of Uzbekistan Shavkat attended the summit. President of Afghanistan Mohammed Ashraf Ghani, President of Belarus Lukashenko, President of Iran Hassan Rouhani, President of Mongolia Butulaga, as well as UN Undersecretary General Rosemary A. DiCarlo were also in attendance. The member states resolved to continue to promoting practical cooperation in politics, security, trade, and the economy, including finance, investment, transport, energy, and agriculture, as well as the development of intra-SCO cultural and humanitarian ties. The member states emphasized that the SCO was an effective and constructive mechanism for multilateral cooperation that played an important role in maintaining regional peace and stability. The participating leaders resolved to focus on deepening diverse, mutual beneficial cooperation with all interested states, primarily the SCO observer states and dialogue partners. They emphasized the need for expanding joint efforts to ensure reliable security and sustainable development in the SCO region. They reaffirmed the SCO member states' commitment to enhancing the enhancing the central coordinating role of the UN and its Secretary Council as a body of vested with the main responsibility for maintaining international peace and security under the UN Charter. In this context, they noted the intentions of India, the Kyrgyz Republic, Pakistan, and Tajikistan to be elected as rotating members of the UN Security Council, as well as the intentions of Kazakhstan, China, Pakistan, Russia, and Uzbekistan to be elected to the UN Human Rights Council. This is fucking huge. The member states routinely condemn terrorism in all of its forms and manifestations, and urge the international community to strengthen global cooperation and efforts against terrorism under the UN's central role by fully implementing the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions and the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, in line with the UN Charter and the principles of international law without politicization, and double standards. While it is while stressing that there could be no justification for any acts of terrorism and extremism, the member states consider it important to implement comprehensive measures to more effectively counter terrorism and its ideology, to expose and eliminate various factors and conditions that facilitate terrorism and extremism. They noted the unacceptability of interfering in the domestic affairs of states under the pretext of counterterrorism and extremism, as well as the unacceptability of using terrorists, extremists, and radical groups for mercenary purposes. This is huge. The SCO member states have signed the Code of Conduct to achieve a terrorism-free world, advocated the consistent implementation of its provisions. The leaders considered it necessary to ensure the earliest possible enactment of a protocol on security guarantees to the Central Asian Nuclear Weapons-Free Zone Treaty for all signatory states. They emphasized the unacceptability of attempts to ensure one country's security at the expense of other countries' security, and noted that the unilateral and unlimited buildup of missile defense systems by certain countries or groups or states was detrimental to international security and destabilizing factor in the world. The SCO states noted the importance of keeping outer space free from weapons and top priority importance of unfailingly complying with the current regulatory legal framework that stipulates the exclusively peaceful use of outer space. They call for addressing various high priority tasks, including the illegal cultivation, production, circulation, sales, and dissemination of narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and precursors. They reaffirm their intention to step up joint efforts to fight narcotic drug threat, including under the 3 international drug control conventions and related. All right, I'm not going to read all of this because this is really like a huge breakdown of the SCO summit from last week, and if you get a chance, you should actually read it for yourself. It's really good stuff, and this is all to counter the United States, and Europe as well, but more importantly, the United States. They plan on countering terrorism and forcing, or at least advocating for UN Security Council seats to include those countries affected by it as well. That means more veto power at the table. More veto power at the table means that the United States has been disarmed politically, and then the Human Rights Council, which the United States seems to violate so much, they would actually use those seats at the United Nations Council, Human Rights Council, to also subjugate not black people, Americans to the American government to the human rights violation it commits. Black Gnostic, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, basically, SCO was actually invented for that in the first place. Who were the first 2 people in the SCO? Russia and China, and to actually be a counterweight to the United States. And they set it off. This is what set it off. They said it's a economic cooperative, but actually it's a military cooperative. It's an alternative to NATO, basically. Whereas the BRICS is economic, the SCO is actually military. So the first place Iran ran to was what? It wasn't to the BRICS, it was to the SCO.
Because they're an observer member to the BRICS.
Yeah. I mean, the observer, but the thing is, the first place they were observer member to was the SCO, because that's your defense pact, like NATO is.
Right, and I don't think because NATO doesn't actually have NATO is not a political body; it's a military body. But
military body.
It wants to be a political body, whereas the SCO is a political body first before it's a military body, because it doesn't have standing troops to react in the same way NATO does. So
No.
it wants to replace the SCO wants to replace the G20 members as it stands, and those G20 members, um, for all intents and purposes, are not 100% in league with uh, some of the players inside the SCO, and the players in the SCO, including Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
want want representation at the table, and this is the fastest way they can get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the strong arm to weigh in. Yeah. And what did you know the G8, it used to be the G7, then the G8. The G20 didn't come into existence until after the crash,
Hmm.
because that's a financial body. And
Hmm.
but the SEO was always a defense pact. That's where it started.
It yeah, it is a defense pact, but I'm saying that
Mhm.
it's not being leveraged as one. It's really being politically driven now,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
so than military driven. Yeah,
The thing is, it's you don't have to have standing troop to have a defense pact.
right.
Like um it's that's how come they have the BRICS as the economic confederation. Okay, you don't have to have your economies linked to be part of the economic confederation. Same thing with the SCO.
Hmm.
So the thing is, um, India was part of the BRICS and didn't become part of the SEO until later. So
Hmm.
basically, it is it's masquerading as a political pact, but it's not. It's a defense pact. That's like the
Right.
Iran wanted to be observer members to it first because it needed to, because the United States wanted to bomb it, so they had to
Right.
run. They couldn't. They tried to negotiate with the U.S. in 2003. U.S. said you're still on the list, so they said to heck with it. So they ran to Russia and China. Said let me in.
Hmm. Right. And uh, Iran, an attack on Iran would bring all of the Central Asian, Eurasian countries into formation because they rely on Iranian energy and security in the region because Iran keeps that area pretty safe for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that and who's on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz?
Saudi Arabia.
I mean, what I'm saying is Iran's on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a
Oh
central
yeah.
it's a central place, which is what's in play right now. That's like
Mm.
they're well, I'm not even gonna talk about that, but they're trying to goad the rest of the world into um, following them. So they couldn't do it any other way. But the Strait of Hormuz is a sensitive spot, just like back in the
Right.
day the Suez Canal was.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
So I'm not surprised. I'm
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that the SEO is the right framework and or I should say the right institution that for the
Hmm.
times right now, especially with everything that's coming down. So I would not want to miss out on being a member of that if I was a nation state. I know that North Korea had talks about actually being a part of that as well.
Right, right.
Um, I didn't post the article to the docket, but Xi Jinping spent 2 days this
Hmm.
week in Pyongyang.
Hmm.
So he's been there, and a lot of discussions on the table. They said Chinese president hasn't been there in quite some time. So
Hmm.
um, there's a lot of discussion going on that could include some major changes in the Southeast Asia.
Hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, I always said keep an eye on the SEO. I mean, the bricks are one thing, but I always say keep an eye on the SEO. And if the SEOs are having a summit talking about fighting terrorism, that probably means that they're thinking about committing troops. So basically, this might get leveraged up. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying keep an eye on the breadcrumbs.
Mm, I'd be interested to see what they do or what was the justification for not going into Iraq and kicking out all those bad guys. Well, Okay, so let me answer that question. Iran already committed a
Mm-hmm.
lot of troops to Iraq to kick out the U.S. backed terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in Syria. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
sent their guys up in there as well to clear them out, 100,000 guys. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, a military fight with Iran would be suicidal for any of those countries in the region, including Israel. Israel wants a piece of Iran so bad they should, lace up their boots and go out there and fight. I don't think that the Americans are itching to get inside Iran. I think that's more about the Zionists wanting to get inside Iran and take down and try to neutralize Iran and cut off China and Russia. Uh, China relies heavily. Yeah, China relies heavily on Iranian crude oil
Mm-hmm.
shipments,
Mm-hmm.
as well as India. You
Mm-hmm.
cut India's life supply off, India is going to retaliate. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't have any jets, and that's a part of India's problem. They they are not military equipped to actually go to war with anybody, even Pakistan for that matter. They don't even have F-16 fighter jets. Even Pakistan has that. So
Yeah, Pakistan has a tenth of its well a little more than a tenth of its population. Uh, they have a little bit more money to spend on defense. Where India's bigger problem is keeping its people calm. So it's a different dynamic.
mhm.
Yeah, but the go ahead. But the thing is that
No, just
go ahead.
no. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I was going to say that um, uh, uh, if the United States wants China and Russia to back off Venezuela, they have to, it's a chessboard. If you can't get into Venezuela, how do you get China and Russia to back off? You know,
Mhm,
basically you take one of my. It's a chessboard. You take one of my pieces. What am I going to try to do? Take one of yours, right?
mhm,
Which is the central piece that they've been fighting over for the last what 16, 17 years. Iran has always been a target. Why? Because
mhm.
that's where China gets its crude from, right? You shut that off. Um, Now the China has to, come out and well, they have to come out and protect it. Number one, but the thing is, rather than fighting, they have to negotiate. So that's how come Iran, that's how come Iran is the target. Iran is always under pressure, and it's not because of who it is or because of Israel. It's because who they're connected to.
So, yeah, their location as well.
Their location, but also uh, 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 it that's one of the most important pieces to China and its industry.
Mhm, mhm. Plus,
Basically Iran is is China's Saudi Arabia.
mhm. Yeah, plus the Belt and Road Initiative. So the Belt and Road Initiative actually plays a significant role in this as well.
Yeah.
China does not want to mess up any of the contracts the contractual agreements that it has in place,
Hmm.
or that it's trying to get in place before it even gets off the ground. If they end up having to go into a fight, then what's going to happen here is their ability to get those contracts signed is going to be postponed for quite some time. And they don't want to wait anymore. They want to get this stuff off the ground now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if basically put yourself in the U.S.'s shoes, okay, your economy, everything that your economy, everything depends on this dollar. And what protects the dollar? Basically your dollar is the king, right? On a chessboard, it's the king. Okay, your military is the queen. What does the queen have to do? That's to protect the king, because if the king gets checkmated or the king goes down, guess what? The game is over.
But if the chessboard was a matriarchy, oh we won't get into that.
No, we
Um,
can get into it.
I
But
don't
then
think that's geopolitics. De, you have anything you want to say to this? If you're available, you can hear us. If you can talk. All right, he doesn't have anything.
yeah. So basically, what we're doing is watching watching things. Basically, you guys could have called this, man. As soon as you guys could have called this in your sleep. Okay, if you look at what's going on in Taiwan, look what's going on in Hong Kong. Look at what happened with North Korea. Look at what's going on with in Eastern Europe, and look on what's happening in Iran right now. It's chessboard.
Hmm.
You can almost predict them every time a headline pops up. Okay, this is what they're getting ready to do. Now we're gonna see how serious they actually are. Is this the event? Is this the event that's gonna make things pop off? Okay, is this the event to make things pop off? Because sooner or later, I was just listening to a book about I can't pronounce the name of the book. It's called Destined for War. They're talking about the battle between Athens and Sparta in Greece, and how they're the two major powers in Greece, and how one was the reigning power, and one was the rising power, and how over a series of like 100 years, they were shadow boxing back and forth until they actually went to war. So the thing is, this is what you're sign. You have a rising power getting ready to try to take over versus the established power.
Hmm.
So basically, the United States is Sparta, and China's Athens. And it's actually an interesting book, because the thing is that how they tried to avoid a head-on confrontation. So they had a lot of little proxy moves. And this is what you're seeing.
Hmm.
So and the build out. The thing is with Sparta, how far do you let Athens build before they become a problem? Because you can see them coming. Now you can see China coming. With the Belt and Road is basically China planting its flag that we're going to assume leadership of the globe. United States ain't ready for that. But how do they counter it? And what do they have to counter it with? And you could read it on tea leaves with the 2019 budget, right? Where'd the money go? With the industry and military, right? The huge chunk to
Oh yeah, they
military.
got it. Yeah, they got it. They got it. The educational system, as well as the money for civilian infrastructure, and
Hmm.
left the country in ruins to go finance Lockheed Martin and Boeing.
Yeah,
The rest of the other military contractors.
yeah, yeah,
And that hurt them in the long run. Because now you have 8,000 bridges in the United States that are either condemned or unusable.
yeah. So basically, you're scraping money away from every place else to put it into your military. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it just because for other people to make money? I don't think so. This is the end game. What are you going to do? And they made their choice. I mean, the military said that I think it was 2016, or was it 2016, 2017, where they actually talked about it. If you want us to do our job and defend the dollar the way you want to do it, you're gonna have to pay for it, because we can't do what you want us to do with the budget that you have. So what do? They get more money, a lot more money. And but this is the path that they chose, and now they're fully committed to it. Two things: isolationism, which you see Trump pulling the industry back and trying to pull, uh, 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 trying to cut the cord between Asia and the United States, and actually pull all this industry back into the United States, which is why they gave tax breaks to the to the largest corporations. Okay, you say you can't afford to pull your industries back, so guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna pay you for it. We're gonna give you $2 trillion to pull all that stuff back, and cut the cord from China. Get off the opium, the Chinese opium that you've been on for the last 30 years. So we're gonna pay for that.
Hmm.
And then the second thing, we're gonna give the military $1 trillion to actually go out and protect the king, which is what they're doing. It's what you're seeing. So the thing
Yeah.
is, now what? Go ahead.
Mhm. No, I was just gonna say that Andy in the chat says, "Do you guys notice Iraq and Iran are strengthening their relationship? I feel like I'm watching Game of Thrones." So there's always been a relationship with the Shia groups in Iran with those in Iraq. That's always been the case. But the problem is that when you had outside forces influencing Saddam at the time when he was in power to go against Iran, that's where things became haywire, and they lost that war. Iraq lost that war. It became fatal for their existence. So from 1991 all the way up, or I should say from 1981 all the way up until about 2003, the country has been under very fragile leadership and political instability. Although they were highly educated, they were decimated with war, war with Iran, war with the United States, and then insurgencies all over the place after that. So
yeah. So basically, we got to. The thing is, we're looking at the tie between Iran and Iraq is the tie between Iran and Iraq. We got to look at that. Iran and Iraq is basically SCO coming in and actually taking leadership. Don't think of them as a separate entity. Think of them as the face of the whole entity. If you look at it from that point, Iran comes in, stabilizes it. Then guess what? China comes in with money. Russia comes in with defense, and then if you do that, if basically actually Iraq is basically the buffer zone right now, right between between the SCO and basically the Western world, right? Because if Iraq actually pivots over to Iran completely, guess what happens? Basically, SCO goes all the way from from Iran and Pakistan all the way up to actually through Syria, through Turkey, right up on Europe's doorstep, because Turkey's already gone. So basically, you're going to isolate Israel, and basically the SCO is going to be right on your doorstep through Turkey, because
right,
Turkey's already. I think Turkey's observer status on SCO, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and also Iraq came out last week and said that if there is a conflict with Iran, that Iraq would have Iran's back in
Yeah.
the conflict.
Yeah. I mean, you just
That's everybody in the region.
you just bombed the country for damn near 30 years. You think that they're your friends? Would you be their friend? They want the United States out. The United States has been there for damn near 30 years. They want them out.
And they're leaving too. I mean, they're hot tailing it right out of the Middle East.
They,
You can see.
we think they are, but the thing is if this stuff from the Strait keeps up, guess where they're going back to? Didn't Trump just send another 1,000 troops or back into the Middle East?
Oh, well, that's not.
Huh?
Well, that's not enough to. Yeah, but
I
that's
know.
not enough to actually commit anything. I mean, Iran has 100,000 troops inside Iraq right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that's a fraction of their force.
I know, but what I'm saying is, it's a fraction of their force. What I'm saying is, what does it point to? A bigger,
Oh,
yeah, it points to something bigger. Could it be? Could it be just a door knock, or are they serious? We don't know yet. We don't know yet, and it depends on how much does whether U.S. citizens actually follow them after 30 years of this stuff. That's another question.
And is Saudi Arabia willing to pay for that? Because all of Iran's missiles can reach anywhere within Saudi Arabia in a matter of minutes, and there's nothing that Saudi Arabia can do about it. The first thing they're going to go after is they're going to destroy their
Oil infrastructure.
The oil infrastructure of Aramco. So
yeah. Yeah, you got to mute your feed, DE. He's listening. Yeah, what I'm saying is, basically, it's under threat, and everybody knows it's under threat. But the thing is, if you go after Aramco, basically, all bets are off, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Then Europe and the United States will actually come in full force, and then it'll be game on.
I don't know if Europe would commit themselves to something like that, because they don't really need to.
Yeah.
For Aramco.
Oh yeah.
Because they get a good portion of their oil from Russia to begin with, and they also other deposits that they can tap into from Africa. So
Mm.
going to war for going to war for Saudi Arabia wouldn't be worth it on their behalf. They would actually have to justify because when the United States wanted them to go into Iraq with them, you know, they actually said no.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually said no, they weren't going to go into it, Iraq with them. So I think what's happening here is that Saudi Arabia is seeing the writing on the wall that we need help because we can't really rely on the United States because if something was to happen and they happen to pull their troops out, you know, we're screwed because
Mm.
as a theocracy is very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is one spark. You know, all somebody got to do is drop a match, and that's it. The whole thing is on fire in a
Mm.
matter of days.
Do you think the United States can actually afford for Saudi Arabia to actually switch sides?
What do you mean?
If Saudi Arabia switched sides to the SCO and to China, do you think the United States can afford that?
No, well, no, they can't. But what I'm saying is, there is no real justification to have Saudi Arabia at this point in the SCO. They don't really offer anything that's tangible. Their oil wells are going dry, and will probably go
Mm.
dry in the next few decades.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they really don't have anything. They're a tinderbox right now, and maybe the UAE has something to offer, but not Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm. But
They're
where?
very weak. Militarily speaking, they're very
Mm.
weak. They can't take on Yemen. Iran would be like trying to go up against Matumbo if you're Isaiah Thomas. It's not worth it.
No, it's not worth it. But the thing is that the United States is, the United States is tied at the hip to Saudi Arabia, not only just about oil, but also financially. They're tied at the hip.
Hmm.
So
Right, and that's why you see the king Saudi Arabia flying to Moscow to get some assistance because you know they need reassurances on security as well. There's discussion about Saudi Arabia purchasing the S-400 system.
mm-hmm.
Um, whether or not that's going to go through, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe America will probably have Raytheon United Technologies sell them another cheap battery system to put in place to keep them satisfied or pacified. We've read some articles before about
Mm-hmm.
how MBS Mohammed bin Salman, the Prince
Yeah.
of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
um, sleeps is paranoid when he sleeps. He sleeps in outside of Jeddah or something like that. Jeddah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's afraid to sleep in the capital because you know he's worried that people may come in and try to kill him.
Yeah, yeah. He is. He's. Yeah, he should. He's ruthless, and he's done a few things that to actually gain power. This is game. Basically, this is Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
and this is basically this is the end game. So, does Saudi Arabia switch side? If they do, then what backs the dollar? I mean, literally, what backs the dollar?
Military force at that point.
And you don't have enough of that.
Yeah, right. To take on you know that neighborhood that would be
Hmm.
very risky to send your guys in there and send your guys into Venezuela and send your guys into you know Western Europe, Eastern Europe. It would be suicide for you know to spread your guys that thin.
Mm.
It wouldn't work.
Hmm.
So that's why they wanted a Middle East NATO, where Saudi Arabia is at the helm of the security framework in place. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere, especially if everybody knows you're sleeping with Israel. It's not a good look for Saudi Arabia at this point.
They're doing what they need to do to survive because they see the writing on the wall. So if they're going to stay on this side, basically Israel is the only friend they have in that region.
Yeah, yeah, the writing on the wall is in Arabic too.
Well, I forget what it could be in Hebrew also.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to share my screen
Yeah.
with you guys. Uh, before I started the hangout, I was late for this hangout because I had to go to a Juneteenth event.
Oh, cool.
And one of the things on the docket was what
Mm.
I'm showing on the screen right now. And basically, what it says on the docket is that when you don't come from a background that pushes education, you need the school to provide the motivation.
That's true.
So this was black. This was about Adolf's event, basically American descendants of slaves, those who
Mm.
are victims of racism today in
Mm.
2018 and 2019. What are some of the obstacles that they're going through? And these are comments from the kids that they interviewed coming out of high school. And they said,
Mm.
when you don't come from a background that pushes education, you need the school to provide the motivation.
Mm.
We discuss this type of stuff on this channel all the time as to why you need to be focused on fourth industrialization. Um, reading these articles and doing this type of work, because if you come from a background that doesn't push education, you are screwed going forward, because a lot of these other communities are actually focused on this type of stuff,
Right.
artificial intelligence and
Mm.
all the blockchain and
Mm.
machine learning, automation, and things like that. A lot of black people are not ready for what's about to come down the pipeline, and
Mm.
high probability that you could get left behind permanently as a permanent underclass. Dr.
Mm.
Claude Anderson was on Dr. Boyce Watkins' channel about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, and talked
Mm.
about the length of time, the duration that Black people have in America to really get this ship turned around. He's saying by
Mm.
2053. We've been saying by 2050. If you don't get it right by 2050, you are screwed.
You,
Um,
you may
but
already be screwed, but you may already be screwed. It depends on who you
well,
talk to.
well, if you're hedging your bet against the Zennials, you have to put your resources behind there to ensure that they get the best opportunity possible by passing down a legacy of not so much as wealth, but a legacy of excellence that they
Mm-hmm.
can achieve to, they can aspire to. And
Mm-hmm.
these kids coming out of high school from this event that I attended tonight
Uh-huh.
tells me that they are very angry that the elders did not pass something down to them. Um, that they come from these sort of environments where nobody's actually looking out for their best interests.
Well, they can be angry, but the thing is, they're facing the same thing that everybody else faced. Suck it up.
Hmm.
Suck it up. Basically, we did pass it down because they have far more opportunities, far better educations, far better schools than I grew up with at the same age. Suck it up. It's
Hmm.
bullshit.
Hmm.
I don't care if you're angry. Get off your ass and do something. Okay. Black
Hmm.
Panthers were 19 and 20-year olds. Okay. They weren't, they weren't angry at mommy and daddy.
Hmm.
I want to hear it. Okay. We need to change. We need to change we need to change the model. We need to get behind it. You need to be going down to your school board and protesting instead of
Yeah.
pouting on the couch about mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy's mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy's a product of how they grew up. And
Right.
basically, mommy and daddy are not in control of this environment. Mommy and daddy are not in control of this economy. Neither are the leaders. Neither are the white people. Look at the white people sleeping on the street. We're not in control of this. This is out of our hands.
Hmm.
You know.
Right, and that's why we mhm.
Go ahead.
Right, and that's why we have these that's why we have these hangouts every week, these live streams, so that
Mm-hmm.
we put emphasis behind a lot of these concerns, because
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing in IT, and I work in the tech industry. I work
Mm-hmm.
in various companies, startups, and legacy corps,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you right now, a lot of black people are not prepared for these industries at all. Um, and what's going to happen is doors are going to be closed. Those opportunities are going to be closed because you didn't do the proper due diligence to reassure yourself that your own future of a proper education. You don't even
Yeah.
have to go to college, so to speak, but some form of trade school. I mean, black people should be pushing for more trade schools in their communities, and they don't seem
Mhm.
to really do that.
What they because
Or they,
they took the trade schools. Well, okay, when I was in high school, uh, and this is back in the '70s, they had trade schools. In fact, you were focused on trade schools. Okay, the feminists took trade schools out of the school
mhm,
because it
right.
didn't serve
That's
them.
one
They
of the
took it out.
things.
And this is not just
Right. That's
black community. Go ahead.
no. I was just saying that that was one of the things that was brought up during the meeting that when the people, the older people that were there, when they were said when they were younger, that they had these vocational schools, and
Hmm.
the problem is that black people put a lot of prestige around going to these PWIs, predominantly white institutions,
Hmm.
for an education, and think that
Hmm.
that's the the meal ticket, that's the deal. And if they don't get into these institutions, then it has no value to them.
Uh,
So
yeah.
vocational and technical schools.
Well, I can tell you, this is in Los Angeles, which is a huge school district, right? In fact, the state took over basically the allotment of the money, right? So every school district with kids is supposed to get the same amount of money, right? And I just talked about this in one of my videos. Um, when my kids were going to, well, they actually went to white school because they went to lived in a mixed neighborhood, and then they went to black school, right? In white school, when they took, remember when they, you might have been a kid. Remember when they took, they had this thing about on school violence. They took all the lockers out of the classroom, out of the school. I don't know if you should be old enough to remember when they actually took them all out. You probably are old enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then they forced to force these kids to carry their books on their back with these backpacks. Remember that?
Hmm.
And so in a white neighborhood, a lot of these kids had back problems because they're carrying all these books home. So guess what they did? They gave them a set to be in the classroom and a set to be at home, right? Okay. Where did they get the books from to have a set at home? They took it from the black kids. They
Right.
take money from the black community and they give it to the white community. So naturally, parents aren't stupid. My parents weren't stupid. They know what's going on. They know what's happening. Why do you think they send their kids to a white community? Because that's where the money is. That's like we need to change the model so we're not dependent on this old system where they can continue to do this.
This Prussian system.
This Prussian system. It's over 200 years old. When we're actually gonna dump it? I know why they want to hold on to it because it's a control system. The thing is, uh, man, you in technology. This system should have been dumped like 20 years ago.
If not longer than that.
Yeah.
I think we have to reevaluate what we're sending our kids to school for, right? What we're sending
Mm,
these, why we're wasting public dollars on this sort of stuff. And we did a hangout about this yesterday, Black Business Intelligence, public banking.
yeah.
If you waste all this money on school and you're turning out failures, then
Hmm.
something's wrong with the system. It's not nothing wrong with the student itself, the body itself.
Yeah. Everybody that's in STEM knows what the barrier to success in STEM is. It's math. That's all it is, math.
Hmm.
I mean,
Right.
if you can hell if you can pump as much math into that kid before he enters college or any kind of system, if he can do calculus, he
Hmm.
can pretty much do pretty much any job in STEM. If he gets through calculus, completes calculus, the three batteries of calculus, he can pretty much do any job in STEM. Or he can adapt his mathematics, and relearn it to do anything in STEM. The biggest flunk out rate for kids why they go into STEM and then they can't hack it and they choose uh, uh, psychology or something like that is math. That's all it is, and everybody knows it. But the thing is, we teach them other crap
Hmm.
because
Right.
you don't want 100% of the people to actually compete for these jobs. You only want 10%. So they segregate them. They did that with my daughter. They actually segregate. They actually do those CLEP tests or those IEP, those CLEP tests, right? Those little IQ tests in third grade to actually start separating these kids and say, okay, these kids are going to be in a different classroom. They're going to learn different things, and the rest of the 90% they're going to get whatever dribbles left over. And that's all school systems. And they said this back in the 80s, and I saw it with my children. I saw it with my daughters as opposed to my son. So this is planned. They only planned for a certain amount of people, but now they're in competition. Now they reverse all this crap that they did over the last 30 years. Now they have to put all this stuff back. And the thing is you can't wind. It takes it's like a what is it like an ion drive? You can't spin it up automatically, right? It takes time to spin this stuff back up.
So if it takes say one generation for them to recover,
You can't recover in one generation. Too far
well,
behind. One generation is 20 years.
I'm kind of putting together a hypothesis. If say they try to recover in one generation, I know but
Hmm.
then you got the Africans and the other countries in the Far East, Philippines,
Hmm.
countries like that, who
Hmm.
are rising up, right?
They're not
They
rising up.
are
They're not rising up. Basically, what's happening is that you're taking the top 10% or the top 5% all over the world and bringing them here, and basically supplementing what you don't have. So basically, you're stealing brains from someplace else because, um, say a guy like Mike, right? Like Mike has brains, right? Mike is smart, right? The average kid takes $200,000. It takes another $100,000 to get a mic. Maybe another couple $100,000 to get a mic. So basically, so you spend $500,000 to produce a bunch of mics, right? Each, right? Per copy, and you need them. You they don't. Mike didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, Mike, there's a long series of educational steps that Mike had to go through to get where he is. He didn't come out of nowhere. He wasn't created in a vacuum. And if you can't get it, you can't get it on your own. You go take somebody else's, which from India, from the Philippines, from Africa, because those brains are needed in Africa.
right. That we were discussing this the other night about
Mm.
why Africa took so long to be developing
It's
because
a
the
long
brain
story.
drain, the
But
brain drain is part of the problem.
the brain drain, subversion, lack of development. How can Latin America develop infrastructure faster than Africa? And Africa is right across the Mediterranean from where it started. Why is that? That's not unintentional.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
But
you think,
well,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say that you have to really cultivate them from 2, 3 years old before they can even speak. In order to get them very heavily focused into STEM, in order to get that culture going. That's why we talk about innovation centers out of maker labs,
Yeah.
utilizing the public school budget to actually
Hmm.
create these maker labs so that you don't
Yeah.
send your kids. You don't have to worry about intellectual flight
Yeah.
and capital flight in your community. You just bring Silicon Valley into your neighborhood
Yeah.
by throwing up some infrastructure or revitalizing some of the infrastructure, and
Eh,
then you can actually build better people out of it.
yeah, I'm sure you crunch the numbers is actually cheaper.
It's vastly cheaper. It's 18 to $20 million to build a maker lab. So
Mm-hmm.
with all the equipment and all the resources,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't and it doesn't have to be profitable because it's already being paid for by your tax dollars anyway.
Okay. Anyway,
So
because the money's already there, basically, and actually will save the taxpayers money because you're going to leverage technology. Because old technology like books and stuff like that, that's expensive, man. Like a kid's book. I mean, you get the private schools they use cheaper versions, but the thing is, the last I saw, I haven't checked the numbers. The a kid's budget for books a year is between 250 and $300. That's just books.
oh yeah.
Basically, that can be replaced by a $30 tablet.
But there's an
and
industry
and
built
then
around those books.
There's
So
the
you,
industry that's where you come in. Okay, the dinosaurs, and I'm not gonna hold you guys up too long because I know Mike wants to go to bed. The dinosaurs are who? Dinosaurs, and because I banged my head up against this shit, man, for the last 13 years. All right, the dinosaurs are who? The textbook industry, right?
Yep. Yep. And the
Te-
professors who write them.
teachers unions,
Yep.
teachers unions, because you're messing with their money.
Yep.
School boards, okay, and then on top of that is basically the government, because if they because they don't have control of the educational system anymore, right? So it doesn't. So basically, if because I actually propose this, actually tell this story, right? Because my other think tank, this is has to be back in 2013 or so, maybe longer than that. Okay, she was a teacher in Philadelphia, right? So she's talking about this about the issues that she's having in Philadelphia, and the kids not getting a good education, and you have so many kids, boys that actually getting locked up because they're dropping out of school and blah, blah all this kind of stuff, right? So I said, how much per child is the Philadelphia school system actually spending per child? It's $21,000 per child.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
said, if you give somebody like Mike and give him a blank slate, and you tell him that they're spending $21,000 per child, Mike can get you in and give you basically the same education, give or take, probably even a better education for under 10, probably less than that,
We could do it. We could
huh?
do it for less than five.
Less
We could do
less
it for
than
less
five,
than five.
less than five. I said, if you because you know what the flipped classroom right is, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I was saying, what I was saying is that okay, what I said is that okay, you have all these basically welfare mothers, right? That are at home with their children.
Mhm.
Okay, and
Mhm.
all you have to do, there's very few people in America that can't read. Okay, they might not be functionally literate where they can actually read technical stuff, but functionally they can read. They can read at least to the sixth or seventh grade. And what you're teaching is like 5-year-olds. Okay, you do a flipped classroom. You incentivize the mothers through their welfare, whatever they're on, incentivize the mothers to be at home and actually sitting their kid in front of the tablet and actually looking at the lessons and interacting with their kid. And then when the kid gets to school for 4 hours, then you bring in the teachers age from the colleges, give them a stipend like $9 an hour, or sometimes even less, to come in and actually be tutors to these kids. So you put 3 or 4 adults in the classroom with these kids that already had the lesson plan, and actually give them a one-on-one attention. Okay, you can give them a better experience. They can accelerate the educational process, right? And you probably do it for a fraction, and then the money that's left over, you do what Mike is talking about. You open up trade schools, whether it's building something, whether it's a maker lab, whether it's programming, whatever the thing you want to do. Because if Mike can take a quarter of that $21,000 and give them educational experience, now you have other money to actually not only keep kids in a trade system, but also bring these kids out of jail or out of prison and actually put them into a trade system too. Because and with the same money that you're already spending, she got scared
And
because she's part
yeah,
of the dinosaur system. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah. They're part of that legacy.
Yeah.
Way how I would approach it is by leveraging the GED and then putting focus tracks behind it, whether it's coding or
Mm-hmm.
autonomous vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
See, once you combine the two of those, now you have a micro degree. So the
Mm-hmm.
time that it takes for a GED, which is about a month and a half,
Mm-hmm.
45 days, and then you add 3 to 6 months of vocational training or
Right.
technical training and these boot camps that we
Mm-hmm.
can create. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a GED. Now you have something credible because it's being leveraged by the city or the state itself because
Yeah.
it's accredited by the city state anyways to
And,
begin with.
and then you intern
It
them,
doesn't cost you
and then you intern them.
right.
At
So
a
not
with a
just
stipend.
intern them, but you
Mm-hmm.
not just intern them, but you actually leverage those maker labs that you would actually
Mm-hmm.
spend your budget on,
Mm-hmm.
keep them in there working, writing code, building things, drones, autonomous vehicles,
Yeah.
micro transportation,
Mm-hmm.
blockchain, all these emerging techs.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this big facility with all these black people, black kids running around making things that other big corporations or even nation states are going to say, hey, well, we were looking for automated street sweeper,
Yeah.
and now you have the ability to build something like that in the lab.
Yeah. I was just looking at at the one of the automated tomato pickers. Tomatoes are hard to pick because they bruise easily. So how do you pick tomatoes and make it a automated process, right? Africa, you could actually take wholesale, take all these automated vehicles to Africa, and because what 65% of African crops actually rot in the field, and actually automate that shit, and basically start feeding the world. There's lots of things that you can do. The thing is, like say you have dinosaurs that don't want it done. You know, teachers'
That's what we.
pensions,
That's,
teacher re-education, all that kind of stuff that they don't want to do. So basically, they literally had to be forced to do it. And then on the other side, who do you have? Who has the children? They don't want to be forced to get involved because they haven't been socialized to do this, to do it. So thinking, how do you, how do you bring this stuff together? Actually, get this stuff done. Actually, you know, get these Negroes off the street. Out of the survival mode and give them something to look forward to, and not just here, but all over the world. You actually, if they don't have jobs here, there's plenty of places that need their technical skills. But the thing is, how do you convince people to get out of that stayed locked mindset and kill those dinosaurs and actually look forward? Not only it's not just them, the people on the ground, it's also the people on top. So basically, you're fighting on two-front war. But I don't have to tell you that, Mike. You already know.
oh, yeah, absolutely. And the war that we're fighting is people trying to maintain the budget for themselves.
Right.
They
Exactly.
need, yeah, they need that money, because they make money off the students. So they keep
Yeah.
saying, yeah, um, keep sending them to school, keep sending them to school. Yeah, you give them a passing grade, but then when they get out in the real world, they're not able to actually
Nothing.
achieve anything because they
Yeah.
never really learned anything to begin with.
I
They
know.
have no skill sets for
I,
this new industry.
I know. They're like my grandson. I had to kind of give in a little bit because even though I know that the curriculum they give them is slowing them down, but they give him so much of it, and so I don't want he's 6. I don't want him to do 5 hours of homework a night, even though I could actually get him past all the stuff that he's actually doing. I can basically he already reached like on a third grade level, but the thing is I can get him past all this and accelerate his learning. But the thing is, you got to fight the school, and
There's
one thing
really no
too.
reason.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say there's really no reason to keep the kids in school for 8 hours. Give them
No.
4 hours of learning time and 4 hours of lab time.
Yeah.
That will be more than enough to make them very viable in these emerging markets. And Intro to Computer Science, CS 101, that stuff
Hmm.
should be allocated to the public library, where they should be able to log into the public library website with their library card and actually, get a nano degree in computer
Yeah.
science or something like that,
Yeah.
to that effect.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that the conversation that we had tonight at this Juneteenth event,
Hmm.
they're still talking about sending black kids to these expensive universities and
Yeah.
draining their wallets, through
Yeah.
student loan debt as a way to circumvent, poverty. And it's like the
Yeah.
numbers don't bear out. They're talking about 29% of black kids are actually graduating from these 2 to 4 year institutions, and it's like this is a waste of money.
Yeah, it is. And basically, I mean, you could spend like I would say, and this is, you tell me if I'm wrong. You spend $5 billion, let's say, which is a drop in the bucket, right? $5 billion nationwide. $5 billion actually have develop a educational AI, which is already halfway done anyway, right? And basically have the AI tailor the educational process to the kid, because the biggest factor in any educational process, I actually asked teachers over the last 20 years, how much one-on-one time can you give each kid per day? They said 7 minutes.
Mhm.
7 minutes.
Why not take yeah, why not take the college graduates
Hmm.
who can't find a job and then put
Hmm.
them in as teacher aides, and
Teach your
then
age. Yep.
uh
Yep.
yeah, and reduce their student loan debt
Yeah.
based on the amount of hours they spend.
Yeah.
You spend an hour in, we'll pay for one credit that you spent
Yeah.
and on education in
Yeah.
college. We'll
Yeah.
pay for that $1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
there's ways of going about this, and I think the people at the Juneteenth event, black people are they have their own ideas, but
yeah. Well, so,
everything is going to be tech going forward. And if you think that you're going to get around that by sending people to school for like gender studies and stuff like that, that's not the deal.
it would, yeah, they get into gender studies and stuff. I mean, there's a portion of people that actually get into gender studies and stuff like that because they like it. Most of them get into it because that's the default because they haven't been conditioned and trained from a kid to actually hack STEM. If you've been trained, if you get your math down, STEM is not that big a deal. Okay, you don't have to be building robots, but if basically you get your math down, you can program a computer. It might take some people might cotton to it a little bit better than others, but basically you can get it done. It's not that big a deal. So electronics, engineering, STEM, all that stuff is tied to mathematics. All right. If you just do that, you can have more people in STEM and stay in STEM because the vast majority of people actually flunk out of STEM, even if they take it.
Yeah, yeah. You have to create a culture that actually respects it, and that's what that short description that I read out and I shared the screen with.
Hmm.
That's what they were talking about. You have a culture that doesn't even push for education. You're not gonna be able to. The school has to be the one that becomes the custodian of that or provisions that, and it's like
Hmm.
the culture needs to be. It needs to be challenged and it needs to be changed, but it also needs to be challenged first
Yeah,
on social media
yeah,
and force people to actually think twice about what they're
yeah.
saying.
What I'm saying is, it's okay. Say, okay, this is just me. You can tell me if I'm wrong because you're the expert here. Um, if you take it out of their hands and put it in, because you already have kids with smartphones and they grew up with all kind of gaming consoles. If you take that kind of process out of their hands and give it the majority of it to the AIs and with supplemental supplements from say Teacher's Aid or Maker Lab, something like that, then the AIs would develop the culture. It would take it out of their hands, just like you used to with the old one room school system, right? Where the teacher could accelerate or decelerate the educational process to the kids' needs. You took it
Hmm.
out of the parents'
You
hand. Uh,
you might be able to get away with not having to send them to school, but to actually utilize smart TVs at home and
yeah,
push the curriculum through the smart TV,
and it
whether
and
it's like Facebook,
yeah,
whether it's Facebook Live or something like that. You can leverage YouTube like Khan Academy
right,
does, and
right.
you can push that content right to them.
Yeah, and remember, I think it was one of the Star Treks where Small Spock was actually in this. He's at the academy, right? And he's surrounded by the AI. And the AI was just showing him lessons on the little virtual, 3D bubble, right?
Hmm.
So basically, AI would actually tailor the educational process to the kid. In other words, instead of giving them a standardized educational system with like a one size fit all, it'd be tailored, which is what you would do, a parent would do at home. Because a parent, like say, with my grandson, I tailored his educational experience to him. Uh, like when he was 3, right, 3 or 4, they taught him to write with dots. Okay, but I noticed
Hmm.
that he was just connecting the dots, and when you actually freehand actually draw the symbol, which the letters, he couldn't do it because all he was doing is visualizing one dot to the next. You know how to connect the dots, but he didn't know how to draw. So I just took all that stuff away. We're gonna learn this freehand because that's the way he thought. So I tailored his experience, his education to his experience to the way he learned.
Yeah, I mean, we can actually write our own STEM guide in books,
Mm,
and maybe in PDF, not in paperback binding, but
mm,
actually we can actually write our own books and write our own curriculum and actually push that
mm-hmm.
and leverage social media as infrastructure and push
Right.
all that down and take
Yeah.
care of this going forward. It wouldn't cost us a whole lot of money to do it either. I would probably estimate.
Yeah,
that may be $100,000 to write the code and to produce
yeah,
the you
yeah.
know the PDFs, the ebooks. That's what I meant to say.
Ebooks
Ebooks.
and,
Um,
and leverage with what's on YouTube or Khan Academy or all or wherever wherever the lessons actually exist because um but basically seeing it online and getting a lecture the same thing as sitting in class or in the back of the class and listening to the teacher talk. It's
mhm,
basically the same thing.
mhm,
So the thing is, and basically you
mhm,
can draw from the best of um, whoever's out there. So say if you have a math problem, instead of getting one version of it, you can get 100 versions of it. So if the kid doesn't understand it, you just okay, well, let's pick another example and do it until the kid actually understands. But there's lots of ways to do it.
and you can reach.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you can reach many, yeah, right. You can reach many more people just through a live stream. I mean, obviously, Google Hangouts is going to go away, but there's
Mhm.
other ways of broadcasting, like Zoom or something like that.
Yeah.
OBS software will probably help you as well.
Hmm.
There's just different ways of going about it, and
Hmm.
I don't know. At least I haven't spoken to any Black people who are ready to actually have that deep conversation about creating their own platform that's actually going to circumvent a lot of these issues that they're talking about and that they're complaining about.
Yeah. Yeah. It basically, you could write a program, but also, if you get a group of parents can actually do it themselves, with the aid of, some counselors, look at the book and basically, literally sit down and actually pick the video. Like you have a list of videos and go along with the book, list of problems, all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't take that long. Um, but the thing is do we have the will to actually do it? Are we so wedded and brainwashed to the old system that we can't do it? But for our
Mm-hmm.
kids to actually compete, we're going to have to do it. The thing is, are we going to, as a nation, are we going to do this? Are we going to put
What's
something behind it?
yeah? What's the opposite of oppression system?
Of the Prussian school system, which is the
Yeah.
walking model, which is something from Socrates, where you actually what did they call it? What do they call it? I can't remember the name of it. Where the school system is actually tailored to the student. Uh, Montessori.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. I was
I
that
think that's the opposite of the Prussian school system.
right, and I think Complex Design has good familiarity with Montessori schools. I
Oh
think
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
his daughter.
My daughter spent like her preschool. She spent about 4 years in the Montessori system.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where I learned. That's the first way I learned. I said they taught these little kids like 3 hours a day, and they were much far more advanced than kids that actually spent all day in class. I said, okay, you don't need to have these kids, uh, you know, sitting in class 8 hours a day to teach them something. But if you look at it, basically the public school system wasn't really public school system was designed to be a babysitting system, a control system for
Mm-hmm.
kids because they were wayward, while the parents were at work. That's what it was designed to do, keep them off the street. That's number one. And then they said, well, now that we have them off the street, we might as well teach them something. Okay. Now that they're off the street, teach them something. Now we can actually brainwash them and socialize them. So basically the Prussian school system was actually designed in America is actually designed for three things, right? First is babysitting, keep them off the street, keep them controlled and off the street. Second is to socialize them and brainwash them, and third is education. So basically, the Prussian school system is it's third. The third on the list is actually education. The first two are more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a hangout on Montessori schools and this Montessori school system
Hmm.
way of teaching because that's something
Hmm.
that I think we should actually examine.
Yeah.
A lot of Black people are kind of sleeping on this whole entire objective.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most black folks, um, you know, uh, basically do what they maintain their kids. Here's the food. I'm home. I'm tired. I'm grumpy. Here's the food. Here's your clothes, and here's your game system. Just don't bother me. If you do your homework, you do your homework. If you don't, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. And and 9 times out of 10, they don't even, especially boys. The boy is like 10, 12 years old before they actually catch it because they're not paying attention. They're not actively pushing the kid. They're passive about it because they expect the school system to actually do what they need to do. I send them to school, and that's all I'm supposed to do. I feed them, I clothe them, send them to school, and the rest is on the school system. So by the time you feel like figure out the school system is actually failing this kid, basically you're already 8 years into the game, and you're 8 years behind the curve.
Right. I'd be interested in knowing how China educates their kids as well. 'Cause I don't
Hmm.
think they use the Prussian school system either.
No,
So,
well, yeah, no, they have their own system, and their system is far more strict, which is why which is why Asians come here and actually kick ass because their system is far more strict. It's more rigid, it's less creativity, but it's far more strict. So basically, actually, a lot of the Prussian school system was actually a blend of what China does and what the Catholic Church did. But China's far more strict.
yeah, I'll make sure I have to write that down. I actually do a hangout on that
Mm-hmm.
because I think we might be onto something major if we can actually put something together, especially with all these guys in tech and stuff like that.
Hmm.
We can actually write a curriculum that would go from pre-K to
Yeah,
up
yeah,
to up to high school and actually
yeah,
have them more advanced.
yeah.
And if black people can code, they would actually be very competitive with
Hmm.
India.
Hmm.
Uh, the reason why a lot of American companies choose India is one, they speak English, but two, they have a lot of brain power, a lot of
Yeah,
human capital.
yeah. Because the whole in the late '90s, the whole society decided our way out was coding, was programming. So the whole society just pushed all their kids into programming. I mean, just you have little kids poor little kids on the street passing down coding books because they know that's their
Hmm.
ticket out. So the whole society is behind it, which is the difference. In a liberal society like this, everybody's not behind it, and that's the problem. Everybody's too wedded to the old dinosaurs. And basically, I'm tired of cracking my head up against the wall because it said okay, well, it costs too much. No, it doesn't. It actually costs less. Okay, it actually costs
Hmm.
less. Well, the kids won't get it in one-on-one time. Actually, they will get more one-on-one time. Well, actually, all these excuses, and then it comes down to I just don't want to do it because I actually challenged some black people a long time ago, and one guy he was talking about education, all this the black community getting better, and he's actually in business. He actually owned a grocery store or something like that, and I said, well, how come you don't have your wife? How come you don't homeschool your kids and leverage all the technology? And he said simply, I need my wife to work. In other words, they need somebody to babysit the kid at home,
Hmm.
which is the issue.
Yeah.
So it's like what do you call it? Spaghetti code?
Yeah. That's terrible, man.
It's spaghetti code. But that's the way I feel, and that's what frustrates me is that you because I got tired of it, man, on my old program. Right, our last 30 minutes was always about solutions, and we brainstorm and come up with viable solutions for people to actually use, and and then they get cold feet because they're wedded to the old system. So why you ask for solutions if you're not going to do them? If you're not going to get behind it? And I know, I said, why should I expend my energy to actually get behind it when I know that, you know, 3 weeks into the whole deal, actually gonna drop the ball. You're gonna find something else to do. I'm too busy, blah blah blah, and I've wasted 3 weeks on you, and I've done that before
Hmm. Hmm.
because I'm too wedded to doing what I used to do, and I'm not comfortable stepping out of my comfort zone and actually doing something different, which is actually better. Even with my own grandson. The thing is getting the women to get out of the fucking way.
Okay, yeah, he's uncomfortable right now. Okay, he's uncomfortable right now. You need to just say he needs to go. He's. I know he's 4, but the thing is, learning his multiplications by learning his multiplication facts. You do that, he can do multiplication. He can be advanced further than most kids in school. But all you have to do is sit down with him, take the 10 or 15 minutes, get off your fucking smartphone for 15 minutes, go through the cards. In 10 weeks, in 5 or 10 weeks, he'll know his multiplication table and never have to learn them again. He'd be much more far advanced over the kids that he's with. Do you think she spends 15 minutes doing it? No, because she just doesn't want to do
Right.
it. She basically it doesn't take that much time. It's not expensive. There's no money involved. It's just 15 minutes of your time every day. That's it, which is nothing. But the thing is,
Right.
how do you crack people's heads? Because I spend 2 hours with him. I mean, the reason he is where he is because I sat down 5, 6 days a week with him for 2 hours and make him sit there and learn this stuff. But how do you get people to
You,
actually invest in their own kid?
you got to take it from them by creating border schools. Maybe not too far away from where they live, but actually in an isolated area.
Mm,
And do that for like a summer, rather than to send them to school all year long. You might be able to get a lot of that stuff knocked out in one summer.
you
And
could, you could, but you could. The thing is, one, it's expensive. Number two, what you gonna fight the dinosaurs?
mhm.
It's fighting. It's not that not that it's expensive. It's not that it can't be done. In fact, it scares most people, Mike. You know what scares them most? When they see that it can be done. Then
Right.
this shit might work. The most pushback that I've ever gotten about any idea is when people see that it can be done.
Mhm.
That the stuff is there. You
And it
do
has to
this.
be.
Yeah, well, yeah, has to. Has to is something. Is something else. Has to is when it's too late. Okay, when you playing, we has to is when you're playing catch up.
And this is the last go around. I mean, you say a generation is 20 years. I think they've decreased it down to 18 now. But between now, 2019 and 2050, you got what? That's 40 years. What was that?
Well, there's a tipping point, right? Remember the book, The Tipping Point.
Mm,
The Z's are the tipping point. You lose them, it's gone. As far as the black community is concerned, you lose the Z's, it's over.
mm,
Whatever the Z's were like, that's basically they're going to determine the future of what we call the black community or the black society in America. They're the tipping point, and
mm.
either
Because
you,
those are the ones that you get in an argument from when you told to this is what you got to do. Well, I can do what I want to do. I can learn on my own. I can do. Those are
The
the ones
liberal mindset.
who hang out and argue with you. Right?
what the thing is that um, the thing is what Mike is talking about. Why would you pay $100,000, uh, spend 4 to 5 years of your time, and come out making $20,000 a year when Mike can do something for you in 6 months or less?
Mhm.
Have you
You
give you a
know,
better
I
outcome?
went to trade. I
Go
they
went
ahead.
to
don't look
trade
at it
school
that
before
way.
I went.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying that I went to trade school before I even got into college. So
Mm,
I worked for computer electronics, and
mm,
that's how once I graduated, I actually transferred my credits to a university. So
mm,
the trade to me, the trade school was more beneficial than the university itself. We were hands on every single day,
right.
and we were working on a lot of emerging tech.
Mm,
At the time we were working on
Cisco. Yeah.
well,
Mm,
solar and wind
okay.
turbines and stuff like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
We were down all the way out to the breadboard,
Mm,
soldering components and
yeah.
oscilloscopes and multimeters and stuff like that.
Mm,
I got more value out of that than I did in college.
yeah. Well, yeah, because college is a different experience. It's
Hmm.
a it's a different experience than trade school. Trade school is hands on, but college is more theoretical. You actually need both, But for most people don't even need both, or can't do both. But the thing is, if you prepare the kid, if you prepare the kid for anything, which is give them the vast amount, as much English and math that you actually push into them, uh,
Hmm.
then when they come out, they're ready for pretty much anything that you can throw at them.
Right.
That's what you want, whether it's trade
Right.
school, because even in electronics, because I took electronics in trade school, right? And most kids struggle with what? Math, trigonometry. That's
Yeah.
what they're struggling with. They
Yeah.
just a simple
It
circle.
become very remedial.
Yeah,
Remedial courses become necessary for them, and that's
yeah,
because it's not being cultivated at
yeah,
a at the single digit age of six,
yeah,
7, and 8. So
yeah, yeah. But basically, you can, because my daughter going to a Montessori school, I broke it down because I went through calculus. I said, "Oh, let me break it down. You can start teaching algebra in the fourth grade. You really because when I look back on my educational schooling, right in high school, virtually most kids took the same math. They take basic math to the third grade or the fourth grade where they learn multiplication and division, and they basically take the same thing over and over again throughout the whole educational project. They actually repeat it 4 times or
hmm
3 or 4 times instead of progressing, pushing them to progress. One is because the teachers don't want to teach it because it's too difficult to start teaching little kids algebra in like the fourth grade, because that means the teachers have to be uh, have to have a better credentials. They have to have actual math teachers teaching it, or they have to. Um, it's harder for them to actually get a teaching credential because they have to have more math, and which is harder on them, something they don't want to do. And what I'm saying is, if you really wanted to actually do this, it's not that hard to do. You could actually take your time.
no, I
If
don't
they,
think it's
huh?
no, I don't think it's hard at all. I think it's a more willpower and some financial resources. I mean, somebody has to be compensated, for all the effort that they're putting into this.
You're blowing the money anyway. You
Right.
know, I mean, the average. I mean, even the. I think with inflation, I think the cheapest school system, I think is at least 10 grand per student. The money's there. Money's there. And
Yeah, it is definitely.
the tech is so cheap now. The tech is so cheap. It's on a freaking cheap ass smartphone. Tech is so cheap. So the thing is, it's not the expense. The materials actually, learning materials actually cheap. Um, the extracurriculum stuff that would take millions of dollars is actually already there online. It's already there. All you have to do is access it. So why are you still
Yeah.
teaching the 200-year-old method when the stuff is right there? I actually told that to my daughter, teaching her math. I said, she said, well, they're teaching an old-fashioned way. I said, look. I said, I'll show you a couple times, but said all you have to do is figure out, punch the name of the problem into YouTube. You can get 50 different answers in a way to do it. You can learn it yourself. She never came back to ask me anything else. She actually learned how to find it herself. It's not that hard.
hmm hmm Yeah, definitely. That's something that I think we'll probably have to do a deeper dive on as to
Hmm.
what it would cost, what the digital infrastructure look like. Can we leverage Facebook, or do we design our own apps from the ground up to actually address this issue? Because I think that if you can draw it out on paper, if you could take a whiteboard
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
some dry erase markers and design it out, it can
yeah,
be done.
yeah. Well, basically, okay, um, okay. I'm gorilla style, right? Gorillas eat what's on the land. Okay. You have all these different resources that are scattered, right? What do you need to bring them all back to you? They're already there. They're already online. They're already produced. Okay. All you need is what? Something to actually tie them together. Actually bring it into the to the child, to the subject in the right order. That's all you need. Whether it's on YouTube, whether it's Khan Academy, whether it's Udemy, or wherever it's at, right? All this stuff exists already. All you have to do is organize it and actually put it in front of the kid. So you don't have to design a curriculum from scratch. The resources are already there. All you need to do is bring them in and put them in the correct order. And basically, the infrastructure is already there. Basically, there's Wi-Fi, whether it's on a phone, whether it's through the cable, wherever it is, it's already the infrastructure for Wi-Fi and all that stuff is already there. Okay, 90% of what you need is already on the ground. All you have to do is tie that 90% to something, which is what I call the last mile to the kid. Everything's already
Right.
there. What do you need? I mean, really, what you need with a smart TV, that's big. But the thing is, what does the 7-inch tablet cost? $30, $20, $15, depending on where you buy it.
There's actually some guys out in Kenya who designed their own tablets in the box. We did a whole entire hangout on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's African Mobile OS development.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they have this sort of shipping crate
Mm-hmm.
that has handles on it, and it has all these tablets in there, and it has its own 4G
Mm-hmm.
modem inside that shipping container, and you
Yeah.
put the antennas out, and they have the tablets connect to it as a
Yeah.
hotspot, and they
Yeah.
all get access to books and education.
Yeah.
So I think there's some examples out there that could actually be blueprinted and duplicated.
Yeah. All the libraries are basically empty because of the lack of books or the non-necessity of books. Um, all the vacant buildings that you have, there's tons of you have it. There's tons of
Yeah.
resources on the ground. If it's a vacant building, uh, uh, all it has to be is have a little heat and be safe enough to actually put 10 kids, 15 kids, 20 kids max, or however many kids you want. That's local. You bring them in. You bring the resources into the kid for 4 hours. If they can't get to school, or you know it the education system is a shell game. It's a dinosaur that needs to be either killed or reformed. But it won't. But the thing is, not going to die easily because there's too much money tied to it. And there's too. I'm not saying people are skimming money off. I mean, even if you want to skim money off, hell, take your cut. If you want to skim money off the top, fine. But at least give these kids a fighting chance to be educated. I don't mind you stealing. At least do your goddamn job, in my opinion. That's
Right.
just me, my frustration coming out. I apologize.
No, it's felt and well received. So thank you all for joining us. Hit the like button if you're not already done so. Share the video after it's been uploaded, and we'll see you tomorrow on Lionel's Crypto Hangout.